Whatever.
Okay, we're live.
All right.
Whatever. Okay, we're live.
All right.
Whatever. Okay.
All right.
Okay, now we're live. Let's not have that technical issue that we had like a couple streams ago.
All right. Welcome to another episode of the Worldwide Wednesday podcast. I'm your host, Sovereign,
And I'm Shiny.
and packed episode again for you guys today. Without a doubt.
Oh, most definitely. This one I think is going to be pretty important, as I think this will be our first time now covering what seems to be an active war. Like, not active war in the sense of how we think of the war on terror, but like we're seeing the beginning stages of a war. I think this is the first time we are covering that.
Well, please temper your excitement.
I mean, I just think it's a pretty important thing because I mean, we grew up in a post 9/11 society, so we're like used to war, but we're kind of not used to the build up to it, considering we were like really young kids in the build up to the second Iraq War, as well as the various invasions across the Middle East.
Yeah, I think your excitement more stems from an opportunity to learn from this experience more than the actual war happening.
True.
But we will save that for the second half because, as we all know, first half is our media segment. So let's go ahead and keep all that stuff to the end, and we'll go ahead and fly right into our media segments, which are going to be mostly Dragon Ball centric this time around.
Yeah, we haven't been able to talk about Dragon Ball in a little bit due to there not being much news and chapters coming out monthly, but this past weekend was pretty packed in terms of Dragon Ball content. First thing I wanted to talk about was the new trailer and information we got for Dragon Ball Super Movie 2, Dragon Ball Super Superhero.
Yeah.
That is a lot of super.
Yeah, which, of course, you put up the picture of Goten and Trunks first. A lot to dissect from this picture alone, of course, which is, of course, Trunks' hair turning blue and the fact that they've aged up a bit.
Yes. In regards to Trunks' hair turning blue,
I like it.
I mean,
and it's also
in line with the manga.
Yeah, because the manga also has his hair that color too.
Yeah, no, the manga has had both future and present day Trunks have blue hair. And since this movie especially has been following colorations from the manga, such as Piccolo's arms being changed from pink to yellow-brown. So, yeah, I think it makes sense. But I'm really glad that we're finally getting an aged-up super era Goten and Trunks, because it's been grating on everyone's skin. Oh, bless you. It's been grating on everyone's skin since, really, Yo-Son Goku and his friends returned in Battle of Gods back in 2011, 2013, that Goten and Trunks hadn't aged up yet. And
well, see, here's the thing. I don't think people realize Saiyan anatomy is different from human anatomy, because if you recall, Goku stayed under 4 feet tall until he was like 15 and then aged up 3, and he grew like 2 feet 3 years later. So this is actually kind of consistent.
I mean, it is pretty consistent, especially because we never actually, well, Gohan did kind of grow faster than most Saiyans, considering how we see him in the Frieza saga to the Android saga to then the Cell saga. You can noticeably see him grow in stature and in just overall physicality. Meanwhile, with Goten, he looks like he's a 5-year-old he's been looking like he's a 5-year-old since 1998. So, it's finally good to see him and Trunks grown up. We've already knew what a grown-up Trunks would look like because of Future Trunks, and obviously we have GT, but seeing it in
End of Z as well.
End of Z,
they look fairly similar to their End of Z design.
Yeah, but it's really good to see a Toriyama Toyotaro design for these two in a more aged up capacity, which I think is great. And if we also notice, they screwed up the Frisian dance in this picture, which I think is purposeful because all of the merchandise I've seen for Gotenks in the movie is fat Gotenks. So I think it's very much intentional that in this, poster, they are actually screwing up the fusion dance.
Yeah. And if you'll see, there's a bit of influence in Goten's wardrobe, kind of similar to the culture that Chi-Chi was in.
Yeah, the Fire Kingdom, or
Yeah.
is it Fire Kingdom or Fire Mountain?
Fire Mountain.
Yeah, the Fire Mountain, which was run by her father, Ox King,
Yeah.
who is a legitimate king.
Yeah, because Chi-Chi's wardrobe has kind of like a
Chinese
like influence on it, and
Yeah.
so does Goten's now, which is a really nice touch, not gonna lie.
Yeah, it
And
is a
then, of
really
course-
nice touch.
And it, of course, contrasts with Trunks, which is more modern, especially considering he's grown up in the city.
He's literally a trust fund kid in every sense of the word. Except this trust fund kid could blow up the planet if he wanted to. Well, not too dissimilar than actual trust fund kids. Moving on. But yeah, I'm really excited about this. Other things that got me really excited was seeing the fight scenes. Seeing Gamma 2 versus Piccolo and how they animated, especially the way they animated him twirling his gun around, I thought was very smooth and kind of unique for what we've seen in Dragon Ball. We've never seen such fluid animation in terms of how a character's just fingers work. Like, seeing him twirl his gun around and do all those finger tricks like he's Ocelot is something that, like, I didn't realize I'd wanted to see animated.
Well, that's probably one of the advantages of 3D animation is that
Yeah.
you get a lot more control, and there's a lot more time, because frame by frame is pretty grueling.
Oh, definitely.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. But moving into 3D animation, I think it works for this movie from the basic scenes that we've seen so far.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly. I think it definitely really works. And it's also really good at showing depth. Because one thing I really liked was when Piccolo comes out of the explosion from after Gamma 2 like snipes him, you see more depth in terms of where Piccolo is, where the debris is, and where the smoke is. Like, it doesn't feel like the smoke and the debris are just like a painted background. It very much feels that like the smoke, Piccolo, and the debris are all independent of each other, but all existing within the same frame.
Yeah, because of course with early Z, that one of the criticisms is like you can tell which rocks are going to break. Here, it's not that obvious because it's like the entire scene has been stylized to be exactly the same, including the backgrounds.
Yeah, which I think is really cool, and I think has kind of sold me a bit more on the animation of this movie.
Yeah.
As now I can actually appreciate the benefits that come from a more CGI art style and animation, because it allows for that level of depth and detail to be given. Another good example of it is the rain that we see when Gohan confronts Gamma 1. You can clearly see the individual rain droplets not as like a background element, but as something that's actively part of the environment of where the two are facing off. And you even see how it comes off of his skin, how it comes off of his clothes, how it even drips down his glasses, which I think was really well done. And I don't think that's something we'd have normally seen with the traditional art style from other Dragon Ball movies, such as Battle of Gods, for example.
Battle of Gods and Dragon Ball Super Broly were probably peak movies of their time.
I mean, even Resurrection F's fight scenes were really good.
Yeah.
For the time. I mean, that was really the second movie that brought in like the 3D in a more prolonged fashion when they first had Goku face off against Golden Frieza. Yeah. But this seems to be just like the next level of that.
Because in that movie, you could tell, and it was a bit jarring, but not too much.
Yeah.
Like, you can tell, but it still looked fun.
Yeah, and even with Dragon Ball Super Broly, it was still a bit jarring in certain scenes, such as the volcano scene, where they use the Gallic Gun Kamehameha against Broly. Like, it's pretty jarring seeing the 2D to 3D jump. But with this one being almost fully 3D, it really does work.
Yeah. I mean, I would say in the Broly movie, the 3D that did work is the scene where they shift dimensions.
Oh yeah, when they shifted dimensions, I think that's when it worked at its peak. It makes me really wish they kept in the scene where they had Gogeta and Broly fighting on the surface of the sun, because I think that would have been really well animated. But the other aspects of it, specifically when they were fighting in the volcano, were really not volcano, but the Earth's crust. It was very messy, in my opinion.
Yeah.
especially compared to later scenes in that same area, like Broly versus Frieza or Broly versus Whis, where it's very much within the traditional Dragon Ball art and animation style.
Yeah. And these aren't digs on the movie. These are just nitpicks. We still love
Yeah.
the movie, and it's probably in our top 2 Dragon Ball.
Exactly. But this has gotten me just like really excited just to see the visual aspect of it all. Because I think this is very much going to be a visual spectacle of a movie more than anything. I think this movie, in some ways, is like a tech demo for what we could be seeing for what we could see in the future of Dragon Ball animation, specifically potentially Dragon Ball Super,
Yeah.
the sequel.
Although, if I was going to be honest, I would prefer the style of Dragon Ball Super Broly rather than this.
I do too.
Because it could be super easy with 3D animation to make things very, like, boilerplate and just...
Look no further than the Berserk anime for seeing really terrible 3D animation in a world that should be beautiful.
Like, it's super easy to cut corners with 3D animation.
Yeah.
Rather than 2D. But still, movies, they have all the time in the world. They have as much resources as they can utilize, and I think this movie is going to be an example.
Yeah, I think so as well. What do you think about what this overall plot is going to be?
So,
it's very much looking to be a Gohan and Piccolo-centric movie more than anything.
Yeah, especially because the only instance of Goku we see is training Broly on Beerus's planet.
Yeah.
Which was like 2 trailers ago.
Yeah, I think this is very much going to be a story about Gohan, Piccolo, and Pan more than anything.
Yeah. If anything, I don't think the plot's going to be all that complex like we've seen in like Battle of Gods.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a pretty straightforward...
Like, I'm going to be honest, I get like early Z movie vibes from this movie.
Yeah, it definitely reminds me a bit of Dead Zone, where Dead Zone was pretty straightforward. Garlic Jr. kidnaps Gohan, Goku goes after him, Kami goes after Goku, Piccolo goes after Kami because Piccolo got ambushed, and then they all fight.
Yeah, yeah.
I think this is going to be very similar with the kid who's now running the Red Ribbon Army is like, I want to be a superhero, I want superheroes, I want to fight villains. They're like, okay, we'll make them fight the guys that destroyed our army. And they attack Piccolo, and Piccolo's with Pan, and so Gohan goes, well, you just attacked my daughter, so now you must die, and here we go.
Yeah.
Also, it's not pictured in the picture that we have here, but what did you think of Android 18's redesign with their much shorter hair, more reminiscent of her GT appearance?
Yeah. I did like it.
Yeah, I liked it. Like, I personally liked her GT appearance, as it kind of showed her fully enjoying the luxuries of Earth that she claimed that she liked. During
she doesn't really age. I don't think the androids age at all, right?
No, they age slowly.
Yeah.
They age very slowly. They do still age.
Because
it's very
she really
slow.
didn't age in GT in comparison to characters like Bulma and Chi-Chi.
Well, obviously not. I mean, I think she's perennial. I think, like, despite her being, in her, 30s or 40s, she looks like... She looks how she was when she was 18.
Yeah. I mean, she's probably in her late 40s right now.
Yeah, and overall, I think her outfit and overall design looks really good. I think it's a good transition to the end of Z era, where the characters are fully ingrained in Earth society, despite almost a grand majority of them living on Earth for most of their lives. They never seemed integrated with society until the very end. Like, for one, with Krillin, we're still seeing him in his police officer outfit, which means he is actually serious about being a police officer as a career, which is good.
He's been doing it for, anywhere from 3 to 4 years at this point. Because he started Battle of Gods. No, Resurrection F.
He started in Resurrection F. He started being a police officer. And it's now superhero, and lots have happened within the Dragon Ball universe since then, and he's still a police officer, which is really good.
Because mind you, it was Battle of Gods, and then Resurrection F was a year after that, and then we got all of Super.
Which... its time period is very somewhat loose, with like the Universe 6 thing happening only several months later.
Well, how many times have the Dragon Balls been used since the first time that they use it to resurrect Frieza?
It's not, I don't know, because you also have to factor in the Super Dragon Balls and the Namek Dragon Balls.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the Earth Dragon Balls in general.
I don't think we see them get used much, to be perfectly honest with you. I
Yeah.
think the next time we see them used is Broly.
Yeah.
I don't think we
that-
actually see the Earth-based Dragon Balls get used throughout all of Super. It's mainly the Super Dragon Balls that get used.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, so the
'Cause-
timing is even more ambiguous because that would have been like the definitive like bookmark as to where we can pinpoint where the time is in Super.
Yeah, no, actually, yeah, we don't actually see the Earth Dragon Balls get used, because the Super Dragon Balls get used once by Beerus to bring back Earth in Universe 6, once by Zamasu to steal Goku's body.
And that's in an alternate timeline all of itself.
Yeah, and then the next time we see it is when 17 brings back all the universes destroyed during the tournament.
Yeah. Which the Super Dragon Balls don't really have a established timeline.
It is a year.
It is a year?
It is a year, because Zamasu did have to go forward in time by 1 year in the future timeline to secure his immortality, and then do the body swap.
So at the very least, we can assume a year and
I
a
would,
half. From Resurrection F to Broly.
from Resurrection F and Broly, canonically, it's been like 4 years.
Yeah.
4 to 5 years. It just is very weird.
Yeah, because there's no, like, especially with Goten and Trunks, they're the easiest example to show progression of age, and we're only now seeing them age.
Yeah, same thing with Pan. Like, Pan was born soon after Battle of Gods, and only now in Superhero are we actually going to see her in a role that could involve her speaking.
Yeah.
So, yeah, overall, I'm really excited for this movie now. Before, I was a bit indifferent. Like, I did get hyped when we saw Broly and when we saw the return of the Red Ribbon Army, but after seeing the most recent posters and trailers, I'm now more excited for the substance of what this movie could bring. Because I think it's going to be different. I don't think it's going to be as high stakes as we're used to, which, in my opinion, is a good palate cleanser for the franchise.
Yeah.
Considering pretty much every aspect of the franchise has been saturated with multiverse ending, or at least universe ending repercussions. So, I think it's going to be a really good palate cleanser to just have something more localized.
Yeah, definitely. Especially because since it's probably going to be a Gohan-centered story, we're probably not going to see much of an impact on the franchise as a whole from this movie. Because I mean, for example, Battle of Gods, Resurrection F, and Broly had significant impacts on the future of the franchise as a whole.
Yeah. Meanwhile, this one, not so much. Another thing that I thought was really interesting was, the conspicuous lack of Vegeta.
Yeah.
Vegeta has only been shown as a picture, in the sense that we only see him on posters, and we see a picture of him being displayed to the members of the Red Ribbon Army, but he has not, I don't think he's made a physical appearance in any trailers.
Which, they're probably going to push him off the world if they're going to show
probably with Goku and Broly.
Honestly, yeah.
I mean, the only other place I could see him being is babysitting his daughter. Is it babysitting if it's your own daughter? No.
No.
Parenting his own daughter, I think, would be the only thing he would be doing. Because, I mean, that's pretty much his life. His life is either, if he's not training, he's taking care of his kids.
Yeah.
So, I honestly think we may not see him much, because he may just be taking care of his kids.
Or maybe he's finally taking responsibility and training his kids.
I don't think so, because even at the end of Z,
I was just joking.
Okay, I was gonna say, because at the end of Z, Bola just watched. Bola just watched, and Trunks got very uncomfortable with Captain Chicken. So yeah, overall, really excited.
Yes.
The next part of our Dragon Ball segment is a short one, but I wanted to bring it up, which was the fact that Android 21 in her human-esque form has been released in Dragon Ball FighterZ as DLC.
Yes, the less aesthetically pleasing version.
Shut up. It's still an anime waifu, which in Dragon Ball is actually pretty rare, all things considered.
I don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
What do you mean? There's only like five.
No, I mean, I don't want to have this discussion.
Fine.
Yeah, I want to move on to the actual substance.
Yeah,
Whereas,
which is the fact that her move pool looked pretty fucking cracked.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty unique compared to the 18 that we have playable.
For sure. The 21 we have playable.
21, goddamn it.
Yes, no, it really does. Hers seems, while the regular 21 seems far more, I mean, just brutal and more focused on just like kind of absorbing you. This one, I don't know, I get the vibe that she's more defensive oriented in this way her animations show her.
Yeah, and also she uses like her like blade beam a lot, like more.
Yeah, versus how like the evil 21 is very much a physical person. Like she's up close and personal, like digging her claws into you, or like using her tail to like stab you or throw you around.
Yeah.
So this one is really interesting, and a lot of people are saying that she looks pretty fucking busted.
Yeah, I mean, I already see people like doing touches of death already.
I mean, it's fighters. Everyone has a touch of death.
Yeah.
But
no, I've seen people have 0 bar touch of death combos.
That's different. That's actually concerning. That's actually concerning.
Thankfully, they aren't solo touch of death combos.
Okay, it's not like Cell.
Yeah.
It's not like pre-patch Cell. Pre-patch Cell was a goddamn menace, but he was so hype.
Yeah. But if you notice with her level 3 is that it's almost exactly ripped from Android 16's level 3.
His Android 16's level 3, that's the one where he
that's Hell Flash.
Yeah, when he uses Hell Flash. That's actually really cool.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, makes sense, like mother like son.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's actually really cool.
Yeah.
And then her level 6 is when she throws that like giant like I don't know how to describe it. It's like the same finger beam type thing that Evil 21 uses, but this one seems to be much bigger.
I think I remember what you're talking about.
That's her level 6, which the animation is unique, first of all, and also just really well done. Yeah. But I really wanted to bring this up to say, do you think we could get more Fighters DLC? Because this one, let's be honest here, I don't think anyone was really expecting.
Oh yeah,
after the past Fighters Pass.
I mean, in all honesty, 4 years into the game, I think it's running very close to the end of its life cycle.
I mean, I think so, but I mean,
I don't want this game to have Xenoverse 2 syndrome.
Yeah,
where 9 years into the game and we're still getting DLC.
Wait. Xenoverse 2 came out 9 years ago?
I think I'm over-exaggerating, but I think I'm close. I think I'm close, though.
You were about to give me a heart attack. I was about to say, oh my god, I'm so old!
Actually, let me verify this. So that way,
god, you made me...
That way I know I'm just being hyperbolic.
Okay, you made me feel so old if it was like 9. The only reason I asked this is because we're missing probably one of the only important characters left.
Okay, 2016. Okay, so it's only 6 years old.
6 years. Still long, but not nearly a decade. But that definitely means Xenoverse 1 is nearly a decade old.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Which is still crazy. But anyways, I asked this mainly because why isn't Omega Shenron in the game? Why? He's the only major character, in my opinion, that we're missing.
And Fighters has shown that they're willing to accept GT characters. Exactly.
Why isn't Omega Shenron in it? That's my only question. He's the only one missing. And now that we've gotten Android 21 DLC, meaning that they haven't completely given up development on this game, because there's obviously probably going to be a balance patch after, sometime later on, to balance the character, seeing if she's broken or not. Which leads me to believe, where is Omega Shenron?
Yeah.
He's pretty much like, in terms of all aspects of Dragon Ball lore and timelines, the biggest bad that there is, not counting Lord Yao from the Legacy of Goku, it's Omega Shenron. Where is he? why isn't he in this game? Which has been practically a celebration of nearly all eras of Dragon Ball that's not Heroes.
Unfortunately, with Android 21 not coming out in a season pass,
Yeah,
I am afraid that this might be the last DLC.
that's what I'm afraid of. Which would be fine either way because this is still a massive roster.
I mean, at this
for-
point, I think it's like 3 times bigger than the original roster at this point, I think.
Oh, definitely. And it's gone through so many different developments and so many different phases. I just really wanted Omega Shenron. Like, when I saw Super Baby 2, it gave me some hope that Omega Shenron would show up.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's Omega Shenron. He's the big bad. Even in people's Dragon Ball fanfics, he's the big bad. So,
Especially considering all the lost potential in the actual franchise with the character.
exactly. I mean, the concept of the Dragon Balls being corrupted by overuse and then gaining sentience and then wanting to spread that negativity that they've been building up, I think was really good because it really did play off of the fears that the old Kai had set up back in the Buu Saga, which is that we shouldn't be overusing Dragon Balls, which never got payoff in the original manga run.
Yeah.
So,
But,
I just want him back, man.
Yeah. But if we do get a sequel to the game, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Or even a Smash-like anime fighter.
I'd much rather get Xenoverse 3 if it was those options. Because, I mean, Xenoverse 2 is still getting DLC, right?
Yeah.
So, we're not getting Xenoverse 3 anytime soon. But if I had to choose between a Smash anime version...
a roster similar to Smash, but still in the style of Fighters gameplay.
I'd take Xenoverse 3. After Jump Force,
After
after Jump Force, I kind of don't want to retread that. The Jump games come out like once every half decade. Let's just move away. Jump Force was a bit of a mess, all things considered.
Oh, come on. Don't tell me you don't want to see Yugi doing Touches of Death on Dio.
I hate you. I hate you so much. Anyways, busted ass character.
Yes.
Can't wait to see what she does to the meta. But moving on to our really last topic on Dragon Ball is...
Oh, you had to bring up that image.
I mean, it's kind of the image of the chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have chapter 81 of the super manga.
Yeah, chapter 81, Goku's Conflict.
Which, a bit of a improvement this time around. I know the past few months we've been complaining about the fight scenes, but we actually have a really good fight chapter this time.
Yeah, this one was really good. For one, Grinnell got absolutely destroyed. He got hit with the 3-piece combo of getting his wrist broken, his eye shot out, and then, as you see here, getting absolutely blasted through his chest.
Yeah.
Which, the fact that man is alive is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, he has no hands to use, no eyes to use, and he's currently bleeding out on the side of a lake.
Jeez.
Like, he's gone through it. Especially after learning out his former boss killed his mother and is responsible for the near extinction of his species.
Like, he better be...
He's been going through it, man!
He better be grateful that he is damn lucky to have a Namekian there on the side.
Even though Minato is one of the worst healers in all of Dragon Ball. Like, dear God, fucking 5-year-old Dende is better than him.
Yeah.
But either way, this chapter, in my opinion, was really good for a lot of reasons. One, the continued growth of Vegeta's characterization. The fact that he prioritized giving Goku his energy, saying that I would much rather you still have a chance of fighting than both of us just dying uselessly. Once again, is showing that Vegeta has fully moved past his whole, I'm not working with you, I have my own pride too, we need to work together as much as we can.
And any of you who say that this is a simplification of this character can fight me, because this is direction his character is supposed to go.
Exactly. This has been the trajectory of his character ever since his sacrifice against Majin Buu. And I think it's really good. I find it very refreshing that Vegeta now is picking and choosing his fights.
I will say, another thing I do want to compliment the chapter on is the art. The art is really good in this chapter.
The art was really good, especially when what is it? Gas brought the trains to attack.
Oh yeah.
Using high-speed rail trains as an attack was not something I expected in Dragon Ball, but
hell, I wouldn't even expect a fight on top of trains. I mean, we got it early.
We had it with Marus versus the the Macarini gang. But
those jobbers, yeah.
Yeah, we had it when Marus fought them, but seeing Goku and Gas on top of trains was really interesting because
I mean,
you kind of forget how technologically advanced the Dragon Ball world is at times.
Or not even that, just with how like how grand of a scale Dragon Ball fights are, you don't expect them to fight on a train.
Yeah, or towards the end of this chapter, but they're literally fighting in the middle of a farmer's market.
Which, oh boy, I was like, Goku, please don't fight in the middle of a goddamn farmer's market. I swear to God.
I was like, wow, the fact that Jocko is not shitting bricks right now is honestly surprising.
Oh, he was still shitting bricks.
Obviously he was shitting bricks, but like it could have been worse. It could have been like when he nearly turned tail and run at the sight of Frieza.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really liked the development of this chapter. I really like the fact that Gas and Elec just have a solid relationship. Where Gas is just like, I was actually really annoyed when you gave me this wish for all this power, but now I'm really thankful for it, and I'm really thankful that you see the potential in me. And he's like, of course, I would always want my brother to live his best life, pretty much.
Yeah.
Which some people have actually started to bring into question, though. Did Elec actually wish for Gas to be the strongest in the universe? Because all throughout this arc, Elec has never outright stated that that's what the wish was. Yeah. We've assumed that's what it is because he's shown similar results to Granola, who made the wish. But some people are starting to theorize that what if the wish was that Gas wins the fight under any circumstances?
Huh. So you're saying it's not a wish for absolute power. It's more of a, the idea that Saitama wins any fight type thing.
Yeah, the idea that there is nothing that will stop Gas from... I wish that for the next fight that Gas has against these people, he will not lose under any circumstances.
Huh. This is some reality warping shit, and I don't
some people have started to theorize that, and it made me actually start to question what if that's the wish, because it is awfully suspicious that every time the wish is brought up, Elec has never once said that's what he's wished for. He's always just said, of course I'd support my brother.
Yeah, which I don't really expect a big wish twist for this arc, especially considering we got a wish twist in the last arc.
I think we are, though, just because of the fact that they asked 10 questions to Zuno, and we've only heard 2.
That is fair.
And there's also 7-3's body roll.
Oh my god, we haven't even seen that in this arc.
It's literally just chilling in a spaceship right now. But it's there. It's kind of...
They better not drop it, I swear.
He was one of 7-3's body is literally the reason this arc even happens. If 7-3 was not wholly disintegrated, if 7-3 was wholly disintegrated, this arc doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. And they went out of their way to show that not only was he regenerating, 1, his creators found him and regenerated him. 2, Granola stole him. 3, the Heaters needed him. And 4, he had knowledge on Zuno that the Heaters wanted. That somehow is supposed to connect to them taking over Frieza's army. But, yeah, I really am interested in knowing what did Elec actually wish for, because no one was with him when he made the wish either. So it's really only between him and Toronto.
And with their ultimate goal in mind, do you expect to see a Frieza versus Gas?
No.
No?
I don't think so. Specifically because a lot of people are theorizing about, oh, where's Goku going with all this instant transmission? Is he taking him to Frieza? Is he taking him to Broly? I don't think so.
No, I don't expect him to go to Broly or Frieza then and there.
Yeah.
But, like, later in the saga.
I don't think so, just because I feel like Gas's whole fight is going to end with Granola and the Saiyans. Bringing Frieza in brings in a whole host of problems. If anything, I could see Alec himself bridging Frieza with his own personal conflict, independent of what Gas has going on with Goku and Granola. I think that's more likely.
Well, this is all speculation.
Oh, yeah. Some people have been speculating, though, that Goku's plan is to trick Gas into going to Planet Vampa to get his ass kicked by Broly, which I don't think works because Gas is stronger than Broly.
Yeah, like, that does not work at all.
Yeah, but also, I think the reality of the situation is that Goku is getting Gas to use instant transmission to drain him of energy.
Yeah, because one thing I will note is that Goku does well to realize that his instant transmission is much better than Gas's.
Yeah. This is actually a line taken from GT, where at the end of the Baby Saga, when they were getting everyone off of planet Earth, between Goku and Kibito Kai, they ran out of energy solely using instant transmission over and over and over again, which led to the decision being, do we let this random 5-year-old die, or do we let Piccolo die? Obviously, they let Piccolo die. So I wonder if they're taking that aspect of the fact that, yeah, rapid usage of instant transmission drains the user very quickly.
Yeah.
And I wonder what's actually happening is Goku is draining him just enough to get him far away from the rest of the heaters, but also in a way that Goku will still have the energy advantage over Gas when it comes to the end.
Yeah, especially because it's shown in both the fight against Granola and Gas that they don't have full control of their newfound potential yet.
Yeah, and one thing I'm also thinking is that probably what will happen is that if Granola gets healed, he can instant transmission to them. Or, I mean, Vegeta could technically do it, but I don't think he's not going to
do it.
He doesn't want to do it. He can, but he won't.
Yeah.
Especially because someone has to be there to protect that old man from getting blasted.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Monito is... He is thankful that he's useful in that match right now.
Honestly, he is being hard carried right now. Like, honestly, I am surprised he's lived this long, considering he's been useless for so long. He was useless in the past, and he's useless now in the present. Like, his only thing is, I am barely keeping you people alive, but in doing so, I have to make you take more damage trying to protect me. But
those Zenkai boosts must be really great, man.
Is it really a Zenkai boost? Literally, Vegeta can barely stand, and he has blood dripping down his face.
Yes.
Shut up.
Yes.
No, it's
yes,
not.
It is.
No, it's not. He's literally, Vegeta, after being healed, has only done two things. Stand up, fall back down. That is it. He stood up after getting healed, and then immediately fall straight back down.
I'm not saying he's used it yet.
I don't think it's there. I think he's just done. After basically damn near killing himself at the beginning of this arc, I think he's kind of tapped. And do you think we'll get a Mastered Ultra Instinct versus Awakened Gas?
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. At this point, he's practically mastered Ultra Instinct at this point, so...
I mean, it's so stupid to say. He mastered it, but he's on the first level of mastery. He's like, oh, you've mastered Ultra Instinct, but you haven't mastered it like I have, or my dad has. We're just masters of masters. Which is like, the fuck is this bullshit? how the fuck does that work? You either mastered something or you did it. Either there's more to do or not.
There's Ultra Instinct, and then there's Mega Instinct. Super Duper Instinct.
Maximum Over Instinct. But, oh my god. But this chapter was really good. Honestly, the highlight of the chapter, outside of the trains, was Granola just getting absolutely bodied. Like, it was really just, to be honest, it was like a really good scene. Like, you break his wrist, like, you incapacitate him at all of his best things. You break his wrist because his thing is being a sniper. Then you shoot his eyes out because, one, he's a sniper, and two, his eyes directly correlate to how powerful he can become. And then three, you blast him in the chest because that's where all his vital organs are.
Yeah.
So, it was really cool.
Yep.
I don't know. Did you watch, before we move to the politics segment, because this is actually our last media segment, did you watch the new Super Dragon Ball Heroes episode that came out?
No. I have stayed far away from that mess.
Okay. Well, the new episode has now introduced the space-time tournament, where now they are fighting across space and time.
Oh, so it's just Secret Wars.
Yes, actually,
it's just
yes.
Secret Wars.
Yes, it's actually just the Dragon Ball equivalent of Secret Wars, where the team for our space-time is Goku, Gohan, Vegeta, Piccolo, Hit, Jiren, and Yamcha.
Yamcha.
Yes.
Okay.
Like, Yamcha, like, the former Supreme Kai of Time recruited him personally. Like, he's on the team.
So, what multiverse is he from?
Ours.
I'm asking you seriously.
Ours. Like, he's from the main... Like, that team is the main timeline team.
I need you to stop your cap and say it.
No, this Yamcha is the same Yamcha from the main Dragon Ball universe we've been following. He's there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Especially because Super Dragon Ball Heroes is not one for jokes. It's not really that comedic of a series.
Yeah, no, Yamcha, the team is literally Goku, Vegeta, Gohan, Piccolo, Hit, Jiren, and Yamcha.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's another team which is literally Z Broly and Janemba and Harudegarn, which actually leads to a fight between Kid Buu, because then there's another universe which is all the Majins, where it's Kid Buu, Bibbidi, Bobbidi, Pui Pui, Yakon, and that group. So you have Kid Buu versus Janemba, you have Hit versus Harudegarn, and then you have Z Broly versus Jiren.
Oh god. Hit versus Harudegarn. Oh wow.
Yeah. Then you have another universe which is just all androids. Androids 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19.
Huh.
It's just a team of androids. Then you have a team where it's Dodoria, Zarbon, Goldo, Kui, Ginyu, Jace, Raccoon, Birder. No, wait. There's two teams of Frieza soldiers. Actually, wait. There's two different teams. There's a Ginyu Force team with 3 mystery members. And then there's a team of Kui, Dodoria, Zarbon, Shisami, Tagoma, and Mecha Frieza.
Huh.
And Mecha Frieza is currently fighting Yamcha right now. And then there's a team of Golden Frieza, Golden Metacooler, Cumber, Hearts, and there's like Hearts and like one more character. Then there's Tapion. Then there's a team of Bojack's group and Tapion.
That is the weirdest combination I've ever heard.
Then there's the team of Xeno Goku, Xeno Trunks, Xeno Pan, and like that group.
Okay, that I can buy.
And it's like really interesting. So the fights that have happened so far is Xeno Goku like fights regular Goku, but then actually is like, hey, I'm not actually here to fight. I'm on a secret mission. This is all types of sus, and I'm gonna need your help to figure this out. This isn't normal. Like, this is all types of sus. So Goku's like, okay, I'll help you out, and then we'll fight.
Yeah,
Oh,
so-
by the way, the recruitment for this is literally Goku is literally farming. He's taking a rest, and then someone just appears in front of him, and they're like, "You Goku?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "You want to fight strong people?" He's like, "Of course." And he's like, "Well, let's go fight the strongest people in all of space-time." And then that's it. And then he shows up, and everyone else is at the arena.
how are the quality of the fights? Is it like Goku versus Hearts quality, or are we talking about back when Goku got space rabies?
Space rabies. Actually, not as bad as space rabies, but definitely not good. Just like generic, like they shoot ki blast and you see explosion type thing.
For context, Cumber has space rabies, and that's our head.
Yeah, but yeah. And then the overarching plot that's supposed to tie this all together is that Corona, the current Supreme Kai of Time, has been so dog shit at her job and letting the timelines just go completely out of whack that her old boss, Agios, was like, "You're shit at your job. I'm taking over. We're rebooting this timeline." And she's being backed up by people known as the Warrior in Black Clothes, which is basically a bunch of people in black clothes, one of which is most likely Bardock, and another which is a Namekian who I'm theorizing is actually King Piccolo.
God, that name is so bad.
Agios?
No, the team name.
Oh, yeah, the Warriors in Black Clothes.
That's almost as bad as those who slither in darkness.
Yeah, no, it actually really is just as bad. But at least those who slither in darkness is not their real name. Their real name is probably just the Agarthans. This is their legit name. Warriors in Black Clothes.
Oh, God.
So, that is the new episode of Super Dragon Ball Heroes. Once again, the creators of that have been smoking all types of drugs. They have to be on all types of drugs to think of this shit. This is like literally what a 10-year-old thinks of. Like, yeah, we're gonna have like a giant multiverse. No, like a giant space-time tournament where like all across space-time, and we're gonna have Jiren, and he's gonna fight Broly, and we're gonna have Yamcha, and he's gonna fight Mecha Frieza, and we're gonna have the Goku, but this Goku's a spy, and yeah, this is literally like a 10-year-old snorting crack and then getting led into the writer's room. That is what this series is. It is literally a 10-year-old on crack allowed into the writer's room and then paying him to say the first Dragon Ball related things out of his mouth. I am convinced that's what this is because it's so absurd. And yes, I will be tuning in to the next episode when it releases.
You have fun with that. I have been avoiding that series like the plague.
It's ridiculously funny and how absurd they get with their plots. Like, it's so funny. Like, the last episode that ended the arc ended with Fu getting murdered by Goku after Goku absorbed one of the tendrils of the universe tree, and he killed Fu, who was fighting to stop his body from getting taken over by Mechakabura, like it's fucking like who's the body snatcher? It's like a character where like his influence seeps into your body, and like he's like a part of your mind trying to take over. It's like the best way I could describe it is Glitch Trap. Mechakabura is Glitch Trap to Fu's Vanny.
Okay.
That's what it is. It's so absurd. And also, when Fu got unlimited power, he got reverted to a child.
Actually, that I can buy
With
that.
wings.
That I can't buy.
Because he fused with the bird.
He fused with a bird.
Yes.
Where did the bird come from?
He made it.
He made the bird and then decided to fuse with it.
Yes.
I need you to stop I need you to stop this bullshit. I need you to get off your bullshit and stop right now.
I'm telling you, this show is a 10-year-old on crack. It's amazing. This show is literally a 10-year-old Dragon Ball fan on crack. I want to be that 10-year-old Dragon Ball fan on crack. I want to know what it's like to be in that writer's room. I want to know how they come up with this shit. This is amazing. Like, it's so funny because it's so dumb. Like, I can't help but watch. Like, I have to come back with every episode because you just don't know where it's going.
What would be funnier is if there that isn't a writer's room, it's a marketing. It's all like higher ups deciding, okay, what would sell the most Dragon Ball merch? And
wait. You think that's a joke? That's the writer's room. The writer's room is a bunch of marketers, and they did get a 10-year-old in there because that's who they're appealing to. The 10-year-old on crack is literally who they're going to because they're selling this to other 10-year-olds on crack. Do you know how popular Dragon Ball Heroes is in Japan?
Oh, do you know how much I've seen the arcade cabinets.
Yeah, do you know how much money they make off those arcade cabinets?
I want those arcade cabinets to come here. You know how many dollars I've put into the Injustice arcade cabinets?
Yeah, and Injustice in comparison is fucking mid as shit.
Uh-huh. I don't want that over here. I want those in our arcades.
Exactly. Like, can you imagine a Dragon Ball arcade machine in Dave & Buster's with shit like this, where you get to have a space-time tournament? Which, by the way, I have a theory. Yes, I have theories about this show.
Oh, God.
I have a theory as to why they chose Yamcha for this. It is because for the past 10 years, Yamcha has been a top-tier character in the Dragon Ball Heroes meta, and has stayed a top-tier character within the meta. And I think that's why he's been chosen.
You dedicate too much energy to this series. Not just Dragon Ball, just specifically Super Dragon Ball Heroes. A worthless side series that literally is not just canon.
It's a glorified commercial. It's a commercial with an intro.
Yes.
It's literally a commercial with an anime intro.
Okay. We have gone on enough of a tangent about this series.
It's so fucking stupid. I love it.
Alright.
Anyways, okay. Enough about the absolute absurdity that is Super Dragon Ball Heroes. We're now going to move to our politics segment, which unfortunately will be some varying degrees of depressing to enraging. Yep. But let's start with the least depressing of them all.
In fact,
the death, or should I say the suicide, of Jean-Luc Brunel. It's Grinnell, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Jean-Luc Brunel, who is a French fashion billionaire who recently committed suicide in I believe Paris, in a Parisian prison after he was arrested for his connections with Jeffrey Epstein.
Which, honestly, I'm surprised to hear about this one because, like, obviously there are the big heads that we've had, like, the complete media sphere centered around, but I haven't heard about this guy.
So he's actually considered one of the big heads of this.
He's learning about his, like what he does as a career. I put, like, two and two together, like, oh, this is one of the big ones.
Yeah, he's considered on the level of Prince Andrew and the Clintons and the Trumps in terms of his involvement with the whole Epstein conspiracy.
Because, I mean, his role was as a modeling agent in Paris and New York.
Yes, he was a modeling agent. He ran a bunch of fashion-related things.
Which, if there is anyone more connected to the victims of this conspiracy, it's this guy.
Yeah. First of all, we already know that the fashion industry and the modeling industry is predatory as all hell. From all levels, it's extremely predatory towards young women. From the very just creepy beauty pageants to just the very specific and particular beauty standards held about women in modeling agencies, to the very sketchy ways people try to get women into modeling, which borderline on trying to get them into human trafficking. Modeling is a very exploitative and very sketchy industry, and this man is pretty much the embodiment of why all of that is true.
Yeah.
So he was in prison because he was, I believe, charged with being in connection of supplying young girls to Epstein and his associates, and that also partaking in the abuse of what was going on. And
which, again, learning about this guy, because again, he kind of flew under the radar as far as my consumption of this news.
Yeah, he was arrested a year ago, right?
Really? Only a year ago?
Yeah, he's been in jail for a while, and in fact, he had already previously tried to commit suicide in the past.
Oh yeah, the news articles that we've read have mentioned the fact that he has had a very depressive stay while in prison.
Yeah, this is someone who very much just broke down. Like, broke down and, like, completely lost it once he lost everything when all of this came crashing down.
Oh, which, by the way, I have no sympathy for this guy.
Yeah, no.
Good.
Absolutely no sympathy. You deserve this and much more.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I have no sympathy. He's a fucking monster.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, this
really,
is literally the worst crime ever done in the past 2 decades.
Yeah,
again,
the systematic abuse and trafficking and exploitation of women and children is fucking deplorable.
I mean, I've said this once and I'll say it again. This is the literal crime of the century.
Yeah. And, I felt that we should talk about this because we talked about when Ghislaine Maxwell first went on trial. We then talked about her subsequent conviction.
And then we also talked about Prince Andrew and him getting fucked.
And him getting fucked. And this happened literally the next week. Now, just as when Epstein had killed himself, this was via hanging. And of course, during this time as well, the cameras that would normally be on his cell conveniently weren't on. Which begs the question, do you think, just like Jeffrey Epstein himself, do you believe that Jean-Luc Brunel killed himself? Or do you think he received 2 bullets to the back of the skull?
See, this dives heavy into conspiracism for sure. And of course, we do have to distinguish the differences between, like, rational conspiracism and then the absurd conspiracism that we see so much. Because, I mean, if you talk to average Americans, they mostly believe the Jeffrey Epstein killed himself conspiracy.
Yeah.
So, I would say I don't think he received 2 bullets to the back of the head, but I definitely think he was coerced to commit suicide.
Yes. So, my opinion has always been that I believe Epstein killed himself, not out of, like, oh, he was just depressed, he killed himself, but more out of fear of what the retribution would come, and that it was much easier for the powers that be to pay off guards to look away while he did it.
Yeah, which still, like...
Which, in many ways, it's still him being murdered because it's by outside forces.
What's symbolically, it's still 2 bullets to the back of the head.
Yeah, he's just the one that, look, in this metaphor, he's the one that shot himself. But, yeah, in my opinion, Epstein killed himself insofar as he was the one that did his own hanging, but he definitely was not going to do that of his own volition. He was very much coerced into doing it.
Yeah.
And I believe with...
we're not saying, like, oh, the people up there put the rope for him. No. They literally came to him and said, hey, we're gonna do some stuff, and you best be afraid.
Yeah, I mean, like I've been a champion of the saying, there are fates worse than death for people. For some people, death is preferable to reaping the consequences of their actions.
Oh, yeah.
And I think for both Brunel and for Epstein, they would sooner kill themselves than actually be held accountable for the vile, evil actions they committed.
I mean, hell, one of the, those in, I'm sorry, those found suspect of, abuse against children in a sexual manner. Those are the guys with the highest suicidality.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember, I was going to say, I followed true crime ever since I was like a kid. I've been watching shit like Forensic Files and The First 48 and all those different things.
Oh, yeah. Same here.
Even then, you would always hear, especially in cases involving fratricide, which is the parents killing their children, especially the male. Whenever the male member kills their children or abuses them significantly, they usually try and kill themselves before they ever see the walls of an actual prison.
Oh, yeah, because effectively they're getting their just desserts.
In some ways. In some ways, they're still robbing the justice system of the fair and equal process.
Or, that's what they're afraid of, is what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what they're afraid of. They're afraid of, oh, I'm actually going to get the consequences for my actions. I'd rather take the easy way out.
Yeah, and even though 99% of people believe that these people committed their actions, in killing themselves before they actually see trial, they are, in some ways, leaving that seed of doubt that maybe it was all made up. Even though most people on the planet know for damn sure that they did this.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like, there have been way too many people that have come out and said, nah, they did it. And let's be honest here, these people will be remembered for the horrible pedophilic monsters that they are. But I do see that in killing themselves, they do allow some leeway, and I say that with heavy quotation marks, in terms of whether they did it.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to really talk about this just because if this is, and I do want to entertain a bit of conspiracism, if he didn't actually kill himself and he was assassinated, I think he actually makes more of a sense as a target than Epstein would. Simply because Epstein is more high profile than Brunel is.
I mean, yeah, this one almost went under the radar for him.
Yeah.
This could have easily just happened and no one know a thing about it. Probably the thing that caught people's attention is how similar it was to the original suicide.
Exactly. The fact that it was the same thing, suicide by hanging, using bed sheets, in a jail cell after previous suicide attempts, where the camera and the security team conveniently were not paying attention in the convenient time frame that would allow them to get away with murder, with suicide.
Yeah.
I think the similarities are undeniably similar, and on some levels, I cannot think it's a coincidence. So part of me thinks that if this was part of a wider conspiracy, I think it makes more sense for Brunel to be the one to actually be killed than Epstein for multiple reasons. One, Epstein is the most high-profile one, meaning that if you were to assassinate him, you would garner more questions. Meanwhile, Brunel, while on the level of more public figures such as Prince Andrew, the Clinton family, and the Trumps, Brunel doesn't have the same international name as the others that I've mentioned. He is just as wealthy, if not wealthier than the others I've mentioned, and has just as much, if not more, influence in obtaining victims than the others.
Oh yeah. I feel like he's had a more hands-on role.
I think him killing himself, or quote-unquote killing himself, is more conspiratorial because he had such a direct line that I refuse to accept that there weren't other powerful people within, say, the fashion industry or adjacent industries that were involved, that just haven't gotten to the limelight like he did because he's the most visible figure.
Which really leads me to think, what was the straw that broke the camel's back if this was a conspiracy at all?
He's the next in line.
Yeah.
He is the next in line in terms of the next high-profile person.
Because Ghislaine Maxwell is about to be sentenced.
Prince Andrew has his whole series of events with Virginia Giuffre. The Trumps, Trump is currently embroiled in his own legal battles with the Southern District of New York. The Clintons fell off the face of the earth, let's be honest here.
Yeah.
Clintons have fallen off the face of the earth, with Hillary minorly coming back up in terms of, will I run in 2024? Bitch, shut the fuck up, don't run. He's the next in line in terms of high-profile individuals involved in this conspiracy. And because he's the next in line, but not as known as everyone I've listed prior, it's way easier to get him killed before he reveals just how deep it can go.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to know how many people within the top are involved with these situations, because on some level you expect a level of just complete depravity from the upper echelons of human society. It's a bit expected. What becomes more worrying, though, is how close to the bottom that depravity can reach. And by bottom, how close to us, the common person, it reaches. Brunel is a fashion star. Fashion, modeling, all those different things. In Paris, of all places. One of the, basically the Hollywood of that shit. It is, in my opinion, not a stretch to say that the exploitation and the abuse that has been going on within the industry that he most definitely had a hand in played part and parcel to the wider Epstein conspiracy.
Yeah.
And I would hazard to say potentially that maybe it involves a lot more people at mid-level than we initially thought, such as how many members of French government do, how many people of just international governments knew, how many people that were involved in this are involved in other aspects of high life society that we just don't think about that much. What if this goes more than just fashion and rich people? What if this is a concerted effort across numerous different industries?
I mean,
I don't want to go down the QAnon rabbit hole and go the whole deep state or systematically murdering, raping, and kidnapping children, but I do genuinely believe that there is a level of like systemic abuse going on that is far more covert than what we know. And he potentially could have shed more light on it.
Yeah. So the reason I bring up that question is I'm like, was he showing indications, whether in private meetings in quotation marks, because again, this is just like conspiratorial thinking right now, and so none of this is solidified or substantiated with any evidence, but was there any indication of his mental state? Because, of course, this guy was falling down like crazy.
I mean, any indication of his mental state, I mean, the man did try to kill himself.
Multiple times.
Yeah. I mean, regardless of where you are in your life and what's going on, when you show suicidal ideation or even attempt suicide, that very much says there is a significant breakdown in your mental state and that something is very wrong.
Yeah.
And regardless of your reasonings for reaching that point, getting to that point is a massive red flag in terms of someone's mentality. So I would definitely say that his mentality in terms of would it make him a risk of exposing things is an absolute definite. He would definitely be considered a risk factor to any powers that be that would want him to shut up.
Yeah.
Now,
all right.
Yeah. And mind you, this is all just our speculation. As it stands right now, the official story is that he killed himself in the similar way Epstein did. Camera shut off, and that's what happened. For in all likelihood, it could be very much similar to Epstein, where the guards were probably just paid off to just not pay attention for 5 minutes, let him do his thing, and then come back and be like, oh my god, he died!
Yeah. This is just our speculation, mostly because as far as conspiracies go, this, like, the whole Epstein conspiracy has been kind of separated from, like, right-wing conspiracism, including QAnon.
Yeah, I think there was very much a divorce between the two after QAnon really went hard on the where we go one, where we go all, focusing very much on Trump and moving away from the Epstein connection, especially because, well, you know, Trump is connected with Epstein, so it would create too much of a cognitive dissonance than there already is in terms of the QAnon movement.
I mean, QAnon is just a political dogma. That's pretty much all.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it is political dogma, but yeah, I would say, yeah, the Epstein conspiracy is now very much in a different realm than the QAnon conspiracies. Have similar overlaps, but then again, in my opinion, most conspiracy theories have similar overlaps as they all will inevitably break down into anti-Semitism. Yeah. As blood libel is very much the root of a lot of modern conspiracy theories that involve overarching structures of worlds, the world and society. It usually will lead back to blood libel, which will then turn to anti-Semitism.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe for a future Patreon exclusive we can talk about maybe like the problems with conspiracism.
Oh, I think that would be a great Patreon exclusive. And if not a Patreon exclusive, depending on how news goes out throughout the year, maybe that will end up being a main segment depending on how much conspiracism ends up coming out later on.
Yeah. Though with this being a midterm year, who knows what we're going to fill our topics with? Because as soon as summer hits, you know we're going to be packed.
Oh, definitely. I mean, we're already seeing a lot of pushes from Republicans in terms of passing bills to set themselves up for the midterms. The Don't Say Gay bills that are currently being discussed and I think passed in Florida.
Oh, the Stop Woke Act?
Yeah, the Stop Woke Act. The fact that Greg Abbott recently passed a bill where it completely, at this point, if your child comes out as trans and they talk to a teacher or a doctor or a therapist, they are now required to not only report that to the state, but the state then must investigate them under child abuse.
Okay, that I want to be delicate with my language here. That's a 1940s show.
Not 1940s. That is 1984 shit. The complete and total lack of privacy, the complete, like, the ability of the state to be so ingrained in one's own gender identity, or how one would parent their own kids in terms of addressing their own gender identity, is authoritarian by its very nature.
Oh yeah, it's super authoritarian.
Yeah, this is very much an authoritarian thing. It's very much, in my opinion, it's inhumane. I think determining one's gender identity should be something only done between one person and maybe their partners and family members, but the state has no right to be involved in this whatsoever. One's sexuality is another thing. One's sexuality also should not be up to the state in any way to be legislated. Being gay, being trans, being non-binary, being whatever, those things are non-legislative. These are not things that you can legislate because these are things people are. It's like when people used to legislate people with left hands because they thought they were like possessed by the devil, and they would literally beat you and force you to write with your right hand despite being left-handed.
Unfortunately,
it's very archaic.
Being anti-gay does get Republican voters in the polls.
Yeah, I mean
you know,
mainly anti-trans.
I mean, it's moved mostly to anti-trans, but you know, like the RNC's main, like they still have it up on their website in 2020.
Yeah,
to abolish gay marriage.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I mean, the evangelical right has had a stranglehold on the Republican Party for, at this point, well over 75 years. It's not that surprising that it's gotten to this point in terms of that they would be doing these things. It's just more surprising that they're getting away with it and it's not being literally blasted from the rooftops like it should be.
Well, this has been
anyways, I feel like we should discuss more of this next week, as I think we'll have more information about these bills next week. So if you want to hear more about how Republicans have been passing very restrictive bills in terms of sexuality and gender identity in adolescents and children, definitely tune in next week. But I think it's time for us to get into really our mega segment for our politics segment, which, if you've been following the news, you should know well. You've known that we've talked about this at least for 2 weeks. The now current Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Yes, and this segment will be separated into 2 segments, but let's get into the actual meat and potatoes of it, which is describing what's actually going on.
Yeah.
So recently, Putin has declared the Donbass region to be an independent state, and
specifically the People's Republics of Luhansk and People's Republic of the Donetsk regions.
Yes. And
so I believe they are called the LPR and the DPR.
Yes. So at this point, this is pretty much just justification for him to invade it, and in his eyes, making it completely separate from Western Ukraine.
Yes. But there are many different problems with this. One, this secession was very much planted by the Russians. It was not an organic secessionary group. 2, definitely was not done with the consent of the majority population. 3, the area that the DPR and the LPR are claiming to hold involves many areas that are currently run by just the regular Ukraine government, not by the Ukrainian Russian separatist groups, which obviously is I'll just flat out say it, that's asking for war, which at this point is less and more of an ask and more of war is happening and those areas will become battlegrounds.
Yeah, without a doubt, because at this point we do see shellings and tanks moving in.
Oh yeah, the shellings have begun, and those shellings have usually involved really the Russian separatist groups shelling their own areas in an effort to create false flag narratives that the Ukrainian people are shelling the now independent DPR and LPR, and thus Russia now needs to step in and quote-unquote keep the peace. And I say this with very heavy finger quotes and rolling my eyes because we all know that's such bullshit.
Yeah, without a doubt.
And so there has been that. And right now, most of the world has been condemning this in
Oh yeah,
some way or another.
yeah. Thankfully, we haven't seen much justification in the government sphere, the media sphere, so far
I
that we
mean,
know of.
the only media spheres that seem to really only be defending this are really the gray zone, Russia Today, basically any Russian state-sponsored media will be
Yeah,
defending
but as
this.
far as like anything that concerns Western media, I think that they've been,
Or Eastern media, for that
or
matter,
yeah,
too.
even Eastern media, like just media in general, they've been
Yeah,
fairly responsible at pushing back.
yeah.
And hell, government officials are pushing back a lot as well.
Yeah, one thing that was really powerful, in my opinion, was seeing the three African nations of Gabon, Kenya, and what's the last one? Was
I only saw the Kenya.
It was Kenya, Gabon, and one other. They were three African countries that spoke during the UN Security Council meeting, revolving around Russia's recognition of the DPR and LPR, and they very much condemned this, talking about how this is very much just another form of imperialism. They've talked about how their African nations are very much have been recovering from imperialism and how their original borders no longer exist. The original civilizations and societies that those areas used to encompass no longer exist, and now they are just picking up the pieces of the land that they now have just been arbitrarily given by their former colonizers, and how Russia is very much employing a similar tactic to how the Europeans treated the African nations. And I think that comparison was very spot on because this is just colonialism all over again.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean, we know Russia's motivation here. It's to reestablish the old borders of the USSR.
Not just reestablish the old borders of the USSR, but for their natural resources.
Oh
The
yeah,
Donbass,
because Ukraine in general exports a lot of items that are necessary for technologies that we have today.
yeah, they have a lot of black soil, which is used in the development of computer parts. They have a lot of natural gas, which is very important, as well as oil. Those are three things that in the current day make the world go round, round, and round, and you best believe Russia wants its hand in every part of that.
I mean, Russia's economy is far from the greatest, and
Yeah.
they are definitely desperate to get their hand in the world economy.
Oh, they definitely
But
are.
at this point, they kind of stuck their foot in the grave as far as building their economy with this act.
I mean, that's unfortunately, ever since the fall of the Soviet Union back in 1991, and just the complete destabilization of that entire region due to numerous former Soviet states warring with each other, claiming independence for each other, fighting border wars, trying to get resources from each other, the various genocides that happened, not to mention the various aspects of Western imperialism and
I mean,
intervention that most certainly contributed to the destabilization. That entire region has been fucked for the better part of 30 years.
oh yeah,
And their economies are definitely no different.
yeah. Because think how many countries used to be a part of the USSR? We've had Ukraine, the Crimean Peninsula. What else was part of it?
Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Hungary, Austria, Poland, Yugoslavia, the Czech Republic.
Really, Poland was a part of the USSR?
Yes.
Wow.
The history of Poland has been very sad in the sense that the Poland Republic has been completely been defined by the fact that they have been taken over and constantly invaded by larger republics, whether it be the French, whether it be the Austrian and Hungarian Empire, whether it be the Soviets, whether it be the Germans. Poland has very much been bullied by all aspects of European hegemony.
Because I know, like, Poland has come up quite a bit as, like, the line that can never be crossed.
Now, Poland is very much a line that was crossed for the better part of 400 years.
Oh, no, I mean, like, right now in this current situation.
Oh, yeah.
Like, Poland is a part of NATO, correct?
Yes, it is now.
So, I know there's been a lot of talks about, okay, we gotta make sure they never take Poland. I mean, they shouldn't take Ukraine, though, mind you.
Yeah.
But I've heard a lot of talks about Poland being, like, the last, like, line they could ever face.
Yeah.
And, like, that's, like, their ultimate end.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, if you remember, Soviet Union went from East Berlin all the way to the Pacific Ocean. where Russia borders China.
Oh yeah.
That is how far the Soviet Union went. So yeah, let me give you the full list of post-Soviet states. It's Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Estonia, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Latvia, Lithuania, Moldova, Russia, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Ukraine, and Uzbekistan. And then from those, other countries have since been inside of them. For example, Poland was once again part of the USSR, so was literally east of Germany.
Yeah.
Like the entirety of East Germany was also a part of that. You've had other areas that have been bordered up against it, like the Baltic region, where Yugoslavia, which ended up breaking apart after the Serbs decided to unleash a Muslim genocide, and they fought with the Croats. And the death of Yugoslavia is a very interesting and in-depth thing that I would highly recommend that you watch. It's a very long documentary that it's like nearly 13 hours long.
Oh my
But I
God.
would definitely recommend watching it, specifically because of how NATO inevitably intervened and how that does end up in a lot of ways defining a lot of the narratives that we see currently about NATO and their role in the Eastern European regions with Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean, without any context of like NATO's history, like there's not much like there's a lot of like negative like framing when it comes to NATO.
Yeah, which, for one, in my opinion, NATO shouldn't exist.
Oh, yeah.
In my opinion, well,
I mean, it should have been dissolved after the fall of the Soviet Union.
yeah, as soon as the Warsaw Pact ended, NATO itself should have ended as well. And but I also have other reasons for despising NATO, mainly because I believe all nation states should not exist. Period. Thus, any type of defensive alliance like NATO is an obstacle in achieving that goal. Anyways, but NATO has been mainly known as a defensive alliance, mainly known to be what is supposed to be a bulwark of Soviet expansion across the European continent. Very much a staunch defender of capitalism and capitalist hegemony. Very much a bridge between the various intelligence agencies of Western hegemony that definitely were around destabilizing leftist movements all across the world, as well as running counter intelligence operations against Soviet and Chinese intelligence, and they also did their fair share of attacking people. I mean, while they did step in the fall of Yugoslavia, and it wasn't necessarily NATO expansion, it was not necessarily pretty for what they did too. They very much were half in, half out, which let a lot of war crimes happen, given how NATO would get involved in some aspects and wouldn't, which allowed the Serbs a lot of leeway in what they could and couldn't do in the greater area of Yugoslavia. But then we also have of course, the more modern aspect, which is their efforts in Libya, which many would say wasn't necessarily the most legal thing we should have been doing there in the first place. Regardless of your opinion of Gaddafi, as he was a horrible person and a dictator, I do not believe the extrajudicial killing of him that the United States and specifically NATO forces did were necessarily good either. If Gaddafi is to die, he should die by his own people, not by a bunch of Westerners that really are only in Libya because they want to extract the natural resources and gain more intel and information about other terrorist cells they're fighting in the Middle East.
So that's what people are referring to when they say that NATO is like an imperialist like alliance.
Yes, I mean, by its very nature, it is an imperialist alliance because it is an alliance of imperialist nations.
Yes.
So while it is very literal in that, it's also an imperialist alliance in the sense that the shit they did in Libya, in my opinion, very much borders on what is imperialism.
Because what you're describing very heavily parallels to imperialist actions that the U.S. has done in South America.
Not South America, Middle East.
Okay, yeah.
As Libya was one of the many different wars
But
that
you
were
get the
fought.
connection that I'm
Yes.
making.
Oh yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's definitely the way
Like-
NATO has acted in its military sense is definitely very similar to imperialist actions that we've seen. So it is not inaccurate to say that NATO is imperialist.
Yeah.
While yes, it is a defensive alliance in the sense that they normally don't go on the offense, but does not mean they don't have the capability of going on the offense.
As you described it
Yeah.
within Libya. I think when I made the comparison
Yeah.
to South America, they aren't going in and executing like military leaders. They're more like inciting coups, which is a little bit different, but it's still imperialist actions.
Yeah. With NATO, it wasn't that they were setting up coups, it was more like they were like taking a side and then kind of just doing everything in that side.
Right.
Kind of like what Russia's doing with Ukraine, where they took a side and saying that we support the DPR and the LPR, and now we're going to have our military fight all their battles.
Okay.
So that's why it does very much frustrate me when people talk about NATO being imperialist as a counter to Russian imperialism when they're doing the same damn thing.
Yeah.
The other thing I want
we'll get into that later, but
yeah.
But that element is very important to understand for
Yeah.
sure, because like the actions right now aren't really pro-imperialist for Ukraine or for us to be aiding Ukraine.
Yes.
It's more fighting Russian imperialism despite NATO's imperialist past and their tendency to continue invoking those actions.
Yeah. So the whole thing about imperialism in this entire thing is that geopolitics are just not that simple and never have been simple. And
foreign policy is my least favorite thing to talk about because it's, let's just face it, with our America-centric like political understanding, it is so easy to not recognize that things are different outside of Europe.
When I was a teenager, I was more into foreign policy than I was into domestic policy.
Oh, bless your soul.
So,
bless your soul.
Like, I mean,
mind you,
I was 8 years ago. I was 15 when Crimea was annexed, and I remember watching the news all the time about the annexation of Crimea.
I mean, mind you, probably 2015 was like the spike of when domestic politics became like popularized on the left.
Because that's when Bernie Sanders showed up on the scene in a very mainstream way.
Yeah.
But yeah, so geopolitics is not simple.
Oh, not at all.
And so this whole entire thing about, well, NATO's imperialist and Russia's imperialist and all these different things, we need to break it down on a case-by-case basis.
So I think this will lead into our second part of the...
Before I get to that second part, because the second part will be far more angry and less measured.
Okay, so we're not getting there
yet. No. The second part will be very much me screaming at the top of my lungs about how I hate a lot of people. But we'll get there.
Okay, so we're actually going to just dive into the real descriptors before we get to our response. So go on.
Yes. So the biggest thing about this is that Russia and Ukraine have been having disputes with each other ever since the breakup of the Soviet Union. One of the biggest disputes was the fact that there were many nuclear weapons within Ukraine itself, because they were put there when Ukraine and Russia were all part of one giant country. And so Russia being the successor state and the inheritor of what would be the majority of the governance and assets of the USSR, wanted those nukes back. Ukraine was like, why? And they were like, because we asked. And they were like, no. And so the West got involved, and they brokered what is known as, I believe, the Budapest Agreement, which is allowing for Russia to take the nukes out of Ukraine, and in exchange, Ukraine will not engage in any militaristic action against Russia. Russia will also not engage in any militaristic action against Ukraine. And Western powers will not engage in any militaristic action within Ukraine either. But here's the big thing. It was not NATO specific. It was that certain countries such as the United States and the United Kingdom could not do military action in Ukraine, as that would be seen as far more aggressive than if it was just NATO.
Wow, it sounds like Russia got like the large end of the stick with that one.
I mean, Russia still had numerous other nuclear weapons.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Like they didn't need those nukes.
They didn't need it, but I mean,
I mean,
and I hate this term, but it's true. From a national security perspective, you don't want a country with nuclear weapons on your border, regardless of how many nuclear weapons you have. So regardless of how right or wrong they were, that's why they did what they did.
I mean, yeah. Without the context of like the nuclear weapons, this is kind of a bad deal for Ukraine. Not gonna lie.
Oh, it absolutely was a bad deal for Ukraine. But Ukraine
But it ends the conflict, which is ultimately the goal.
Yeah, it ended the conflict, but I mean, Ukraine was relatively newer, despite Ukraine as a country existing far longer than most countries in the world have. I mean, Kiev is well over 1,000 years old as a city. Kiev is older than Moscow by hundreds of years.
Wow.
So, but Ukraine, in terms of the more modern geopolitical sense, was very young, and thus it was a worthy trade. But we now have problems where Russia, because they weren't playing the same economic game, global economic game as the rest of Europe, they started flagging in terms of their economic development. They tried to do economic shock therapy, which was to rapidly industrialize and bring themselves up with a lot of state-sponsored capitalism and command economies to try and get themselves to be on par with the rest of the Western world. And it failed terribly because, in my personal opinion, economic shock therapy is fucking terrible. It does not in any way build up industries and only serves to make rich people rich and screw over everyone else, which is why Russia is currently an autocratic oligarchy. And so, after economic shock therapy failed, Russia needs resources. And you know who had resources? All of its neighbors. And you know what its neighbors don't have? Nukes! So, what do? Hey, buddy, you know how we were, like, together once? Can I get some stuff? Like, Russia is very much that abusive ex that, like, still needs things from their ex-partner who's trying to move on to do bigger and better things, but, like, knows that they have that power over them and tries to bring them back in. And so, Russia, for the better part of 30 years, has been funding secessionist groups and just very much far-right groups across Europe to basically start to gain more and more natural resources. They did this in Georgia, they did this with the annexation of Crimea, and now they are doing it again with the DPR and LPR, because natural resources, that is really the name of the game in this whole thing. If you don't have natural resources, you are not a worthy target for war.
Now, was there much NATO involvement as far as like combating the annexation of Crimea?
No. So,
really?
Here's how the annexation of Crimea really came down to it. So, there was let me actually pull up his name, because I want to get this correct. So, for the longest time, Ukraine wanted to join NATO. But NATO was like, no, you are far too corrupt, undemocratic, and you have a lot of issues. We are not doing that. You're not joining. So Ukraine was denied. Ukraine tried again a couple years later, and the same answer. No, you're not joining. And so, I feel like a lot of people, when they talk about NATO imperialism, they very much forget that NATO, in its current form and in its previous forms, don't want Ukraine. As Ukraine just doesn't fit the criteria to even join. Because the whole thing about NATO is you have to apply to join.
Yeah.
Other former Soviet bloc states have been able to join NATO because they've met qualifications.
I mean, like in the past 10 years, there have been like 3 waves of countries joining.
Yeah. Yeah, so like countries like Estonia, countries like why am I forgetting its name? Poland. They were able to join. They were able to join. I get it. That's right. They were able to join NATO because they met qualifications. Ukraine did not, has not, and still does not meet these qualifications. However, there was always a sense of we do want to become part of the greater European community, because there's a huge thing going on in Europe, which is about maintaining relationships with the broader European community. That's why Brexit was such a big deal in the United Kingdom, because it was signaling a break-off of a major country from the wider European community. When many countries believe that being part of a wider community and becoming interconnected on an economic level allows for mutual growth as well as mutual destruction. You can't fuck me over, because if you fuck me over, I will stab you to death as well. That's basically how this works. That's how, ideally, geopolitics should work now. War should not ever be something one wants to do, lest they bankrupt their country, lose all their allies, and thus then devolve into what will probably be a civil war that will inevitably break up the country. War is not profitable. However, countries have been able to circumvent this. And so, Russia has always been antagonistic. They were able to set up a puppet within the Ukrainian government. And that man was the name of Viktor Yanukovych. Yanukovych. Viktor Yanukovych. He was, in 2010, running for president, and he claimed to have won, and people were like, no, you didn't. And so they were able to have, I believe they had a recount, they had a re-election, and the other candidate won. Then, come around 2014, another election comes by, and this time, Yanukovych wins. And I believe he did win fairly. Mind you, he is a Russian puppet, and he definitely is not the most democratic person, and he did not have the most democratic plans for the Ukraine, but I do think it is confirmed he legitimately won that election. However, we have problems. Unilaterally, Yanukovych said that Ukraine is closed off to any NATO support. They don't want to join NATO, they're never going to join NATO, NATO's the enemy, we're going to focus on Russia. Which wasn't popular, as this came with a lot of other issues. One of the big things that was being passed around at the time was that if Ukraine joined NATO or the EU, they would be forced to legalize gay marriage. And while there's nothing wrong with gay marriage, a lot of Eastern Europe is very conservative and very Catholic.
I mean, the easiest thing to pull
or
from...
Orthodox Christian.
Yeah, the easiest thing to pull from is, of course, Russia's disdain for marriage.
Yeah.
And considering they're...
Not just Russia, Hungary.
Yeah, and considering that they're both neighbors.
Yeah.
They probably have very similar sentiments.
Yes. And while that was obviously a lie, there's never been anything that has ever said that you need to legalize gay marriage in your country to join us, to join NATO, nor the EU. That was one of the big things. But people protested this, as this was very much not the will of the people. And that led to issues. Issues such as violence against protesters that led to death. Lots of death. And in this time, the region of Crimea, which has very much been known as an autonomous region that has been, for the better part of, I believe, at least a couple decades, been under the firm control of Ukraine and not Russia. They were suddenly like, wait a minute. We like the current government. We like where this is going. We don't like what's happening in Kiev. Kiev and Lviv, can't pronounce it. We don't like what's happening there. We like Yanukovych. We like where he's going with this. And so then Russia suddenly was like, okay, we'll start supporting secessionist groups within Crimea. At the time, nothing was ever indicating that there was a definitive Crimea was going to leave. I think it's been established pretty much that if nothing had happened, Crimea would have still been part of Ukraine today. It'd just probably be a more conservative region, if anything. Anyways, recalling back to when I fastidiously watched news about the fall about the whole Crimean situation. There was massive upheaval. It was led to what was known as the correct term is known as the Revolution of Dignity, or the Maiden Revolution, which was basically a series of protests all across Ukraine about reclaiming Ukraine's lost dignity and becoming part of the greater European community and firmly breaking away from the influence of Russia and communism. I say so in quotations because there is nothing communistic about any of this shit.
Yeah,
But
we all knew it was state capitalists. We know.
I mean, most people, your general person doesn't know that.
But us as leftists.
Us as leftists know. But there was nothing communist about any of this shit. But anti-communist sentiment was very high, and this led to a rise in, Ukrainian nationalism, which then led to firefights. It led to one of the harshest crackdowns the government has done on its protesters, led to a lot of violence, led to a lot of death. I believe it was around, I think by the end of it, at least over 100 people died. And so during this time, Russia decided that they were going to annex Crimea because Crimea was being discriminated against and there was a genocide. I say so in quotation marks. Now, that isn't to say that there wasn't discriminatory practices not going on in Crimea. There was. There was very much an anti-Russian language I won't want to say it's a policy. I think it was a policy, but there was some form of legislative action being made against those who spoke Russian within the Ukrainian borders, which, in my opinion, and the opinions of most people, was really fucked up. Yes, while Ukraine and Russia aren't one, they do have a lot of cultural overlap. They do. Eastern Ukraine, being closer to Russia, has a lot more ethnic Russians, and they do speak the Russian language there. It is very much part of their culture within Eastern Ukraine. So, having that whole Russian language legislative action basically making it more or less prohibited in a lot of cases. Like, for example, if you were to meet with, a doctor, your doctor had to only speak to you in Ukrainian unless absolutely necessary to switch to Russian.
Oh, so actions like that done by Ukrainian legislation pretty much let secessionists run on easy mode.
Yeah, because that's authoritarian. That's fucked up.
Oh yeah.
That's not okay. That's really fucked up. And Ukraine messed up entirely by doing that because you were very much taking away an aspect of culture that is very much part of Eastern Ukraine. Their Russian ties and the hybridization of Ukrainian-Russian culture makes up a cultural identity within Eastern Ukraine. And taking away a part of that was terrible on the part of Kiev.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that made the claims that there could have been a genocide going on within the Crimean region by the Ukrainians against ethnic Russians all the more easier for the Russians to step in. And, the West kinda did nothing. Ukraine's not part of NATO. Ukraine was not in a position to join NATO. And honestly, the rest of the world wasn't going to supply weapons to Ukraine because it looked like at the time it was just that. They were taking Crimea. Which is fucking terrible and was most certainly imperialist action, but they didn't do anything. Which, in my opinion, is solely because they don't care. They don't care, and they're also imperialists themselves, so they were imperialists themselves and they weren't losing anything by Russia taking Crimea. Unlike this current situation where the rest of the world very much suffers from the annexation of the DPR and the LPR, where the global supply of gas and oil has been massively affected, the shit in Crimea, not nearly as much. It did have an effect on us, for sure. Gotta remember, there was that bit of a gas surge in the mid-2010s. And that was sort of related to what was going on over there, because Crimea does have natural resources. It is also on the Sea of Azov. So, yeah. And the Black Sea.
Yeah. So that's why they care now, is because with all the resources we mentioned at the beginning of the segment, is why NATO is taking such a massive role now rather than back in 2014 with Crimea.
Yes. So the real cynical take that you should have about NATO isn't that NATO is trying to provoke a war. Bullshit. That would be World War II. Not World War II. That'd be World War III. That would be nuclear holocaust, and that would be the end of the human race as we know it. Not happening. The real cynical take is that NATO and NATO-aligned countries are only helping Ukraine and defending Ukrainian sovereignty insofar as they are able to secure their own footholds in allowing themselves to reap the benefits of Ukraine's natural resources. That's the real reason NATO's involved. NATO's involved because they want to ensure their investments, or future investments, if Ukraine is ever able to join NATO, in securing lots of natural gas. Computer chips, oil, and gas will help not just war machines all around the world, but the tech industry, which is booming across the planet and is very much looking to be the next phase of where our economies will go in terms of racing each other, but also in terms of how we'll see imperialism done across the world. And so that's why NATO's really involved with Ukraine. They could give less of a fuck about Ukrainian sovereignty. They don't care about that shit. You think they care about the Ukrainian citizens? Hell no! They only care about maintaining resource control. That's why NATO's involved. But that doesn't mean their involvement is bad in this situation. It is selfish, inherently so, but it is not in any way undermining the will of the people of Ukraine in the way Russia is doing so. The annexation of the DPR and the LPR very much run counter to the wills of the people. It is very much a foreign power coming into a foreign region and taking over, and definitely just stripping them of their natural resources. And not really giving a fuck about the population.
Yeah. So, which ultimately war is going to fuck over Russia's economy.
Yes, because of the sanctions.
But
and also the cost of staying in war. War is expensive.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Let's say the annexation of the Donbass region happens. They're going to get a foothold on massive amounts of the world economy. It's very concerning.
Well, it's a bit more complicated. It's one thing to be in there. It's another thing to keep there. The level of annexation that they're performing right now, with the level of weapons within Ukraine, makes it very much difficult for it to just be an in and out type of thing, like, mine now and you run away laughing. You're going to fight that. You're going to fight that for a while. And the real question is, does Russia have the money to upkeep a war?
Okay, so you're saying, like, it's less, they carpet bomb the whole place, establish that area as, now this is Russia, and then it's over. You're saying, once they annex, there's going to be full-on war back and forth throughout, say, the next decade, let's just throw out that number.
Yeah, because unlike the situation in Crimea...
So they'll never even get to establish their part in the world economy, is what you're saying.
I don't think they will. Because, in my opinion... Because unlike Crimea...
just makes me even more confused as to, like, this as a strategy of invasion.
So, here's the thing. Like, unlike Crimea, where NATO really didn't do much, NATO was heavily involved with this in terms of supplying Ukraine with weapons, using war bonds to forgive Ukrainian debt on the world stage via the IMF and World Bank is massive for their economy. This is definitely going to allow them to jump up a couple levels in the economy. War bonds for debt? That is incredible. That is a lot of money being just disappeared that Ukrainians now get to keep. Well, I say Ukrainians, I mean the Ukrainian government.
Yeah.
They get to keep. That is massive for them. And also the amount of weapons that they now have. And the amount of training that they got from other world powers' militaries. Invaluable. That is going to now allow them to fight a prolonged siege with Russia. Which means it's now difficult for Russia to come in with a foothold. What Russia was really hoping they could get away. And that is mainly because of the machismo of Putin, as well as really just the recklessness of the Russian oligarchy as a whole, was that they thought that, we're still Russia. We're still big and important. Ukraine is fucking Ukraine. We fucked Ukraine for years, and we're going to continue to fuck Ukraine for years, and no one's going to stop us. We're going to do whatever the fuck we like. So that's what they thought they were going to do. They amassed as many troops as they did, and they thought Ukraine is gonna fucking fold like a house of cards. They legitimately were like, nigga, you're gonna fold like a fucking omelet. It's over. That's what they thought. Especially because Ukraine's not part of NATO. They get to use the excuse of Ukraine potentially being a part of NATO as justification for buildup, but that's not the reason why. They're doing it as a show of force, a way of getting Ukraine to bow down to their wins. And they have Belarus on their side, so it's like, it's not just us, you're going to be surrounded. Moldova is also on the side of the Russians. So, yeah, and thanks to the previous annexation of Crimea, they now have access to the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov. So it was very much looking like, we got you surrounded, give up. Let us take what we want, we'll leave you alone for a couple decades before we leave. But Ukraine didn't react that way this time. Ukraine very much rang the alarm bells for the international community, and the international community came in with weapons upon weapons upon weapons, far more than what Russia was expecting. And on top of that, Ukraine never caved to anything. There was no appeasement, no ground was given, nothing. So now you have Russia with hundreds of thousands of troops sitting on the border of a sovereign nation, and you have nothing to show for it yet. The area you thought you could come in quickly is now being a hotly contested region, with the world looking onwards. The sanctions that you previously received from Crimea are going to look like child's play to the sanctions you're now going to encounter with the DPR and the LPR. So now Russia is now in a damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah,
you leave, you look like a bitch. You look like a bitch on the world stage. You spent all that fucking money, all those fucking troops, and you fucking ran away with your tail between your legs. You look like a fucking bitch. Fascist autocrats like Putin, they do not ever want to look like a bitch. Fascism very much is tied with toxic masculinity, and if you know anything about toxic masculinity, if you look like a bitch, you are a bitch. That's what they think, that's what Putin thinks, and Putin ain't no bitch to anyone. So, here we are! They have to go in. They have to.
So this whole invasion is a massive farce.
Yes! Yes, it is. But, just because it's a massive farce does not in any way downplay the fact...
It doesn't downplay the fact that... sorry, I was about to completely roll over what you were saying. Just, let me rephrase that so I don't feel like I'm stealing your words here.
No, say it.
Damn it, now that rant lost my train of thought. Give me 1 second.
Go for it.
I had it there. So this is not to imply the fact that this shouldn't be taken seriously.
Yeah, no. This isn't to imply it shouldn't be taken seriously. Because the reality of the situation is that this is gambling millions of lives. Ukraine, I believe, has 44 million people in it. It is a very populated country. It's one of the most densely populated countries, if not the most densely populated country in all of Eastern Europe, if not all of Europe as a whole. There are millions of lives riding on it. And this is the real insidious nature of imperialism. This is the true evil of it all. Everything that I've just described to you, you can picture in abstract senses. You don't actually think about what that means for your general layperson. The reality of all of this conflict is that there are millions of lives lost. For the shellings, you have people dying. For the annexing, you have people dying. You have lives being lost. You have areas now being completely run by a different country, meaning you are completely uprooting a whole bunch of shit. That's terrible. The lives of the common person in Ukraine is in a constant state of flux because you have a neighbor that at any point can do a land grab on. It's very much how in the United States, black neighborhoods are over-policed. It very much feels like an occupying force, and then it incurs a lot of terrible things. That is what happens in a situation like this. An occupying force within your land is something that leads to a lot of hatred, resentment, a lot of nationalism, a lot of right-wing thinking. And that is where we come with groups like the Azov Battalion.
Yeah, that was going to come up eventually.
So, because of how insidious this all is and how it very much destroys the morale, destroys the connectivity, destroys the unity and the just connective tissue of a country, and very much uproots lives, if not just outright taking lives, people become very radicalized by things. And back during the time of the Crimean annexation, Ukraine didn't have, well, a fairly structured military. We kind of, here in America, are like a bit brain poisoned because our military is fucking insane. Is like, we are hyper militaristic compared to the rest of the world. Like, our military is incredibly insane. That's not the reality for the rest of the world.
Oh, yeah.
Military, like, the way we think of our military, which is quite literally just a massive swarm of just drones and humans and weapons.
I mean, we constantly inflate our the dedication of our economy to the military
Yeah, but Ukraine isn't like that. They don't have a military like that. So during the Crimean annexation, they really had no way of actually defending themselves or putting any type of military pressure on Russia. Russia is also hyper-militaristic as well. So, in fact, they're probably one of the most hyper-militaristic countries in the region.
I mean, hell, you can even just compare their nuclear foothold as to, like, the amount of militaristic supremacy they have over Ukraine.
Yeah. And so, they could do nothing about it. So a lot of, militias, they started cropping up around the Ukrainian region to act as a bulwark to what they were seeing as Russian expansion, Russian imperialism. However, militias born out of nationalism a lot of the times fall into right-wing thinking. And, well, when you live in a world where fascism has now thoroughly been invented and cemented in a lot of Eastern European culture, you're gonna get people that are violent joining militias that really bolster that mentality. You think of the Proud Boys over here in America.
I was just about to make that comparison.
Yeah, you think of the Proud Boys here in America. Imagine if our Proud Boys really were fucking militant. Because that's what the Azov Battalion is over there. The Azov Battalion is basically their Proud Boys. They want Ukrainian sovereignty. They want Ukrainian nationalism. In their mind, communism, the Jews, the Russians, the greater European community, all of them are the enemy that are trying to take away the glory that is the nation of Ukraine. And they will fight tooth and nail to the last man to ensure that. And when you're in an occupying force, who do you look to for comfort? Isn't it comforting to look to a group of people that tell you, no, you are strong. We are strong. The reason they are doing that is they are holding us back from our greatness. Our greatness is what they fear. And we shall show them that our greatness is far more than the world has ever seen.
Yeah.
And we can prove it to them. That's how a lot of fascist populism works. And that's exactly what the Azov Battalion was able to really do within Ukraine. And the Ukrainian military couldn't do shit about that, because they didn't have a formally structured military. And even once they did start to get more of a formally structured military, what were you going to do? Fight the Azov Battalion? No. You're going to do what all powers do. You use your fascists. You incorporate your fascists into your military, you make them official, and you point them in the direction of people that you want them to kill. We do that shit. You think we don't have fascist neo-Nazi battalions in our military that we send overseas to kill brown people? Ha! We do. Russia does it too. The Wagner group is currently embroiled in conflict in Africa, murdering black people as part of Russian imperialism. You think it doesn't happen in Germany, or in the UK, or in China, or in North Korea, or South Korea, or wherever the fuck? Nah, that shit happens everywhere. But in the case of Ukraine, it was that much more important because it was one of the only militarized things that they could do. And so that's truly insidious when you think about it on a grand scale. The fact that the actions of Russia allowed for truly evil, vile people to gain a foothold of national pride and honor because they're the only ones willing to stand up to people that are bullying them, allows for some of the worst ideologies to pervade a society. It allows for harmful rhetoric about people, specifically people that are LGBT or Jews or any other demographic, to become commonplace and accepted. That is awful. That is evil. It is truly a destruction of a people. It allows for so much wrong to happen. That is the true evil of imperialism in this situation. That's the real issue going on. But that issue has just been completely lost on everyone. People just pick and choose different aspects. You hear a lot of people complain about the neo-Nazis within Ukraine, but they don't talk about the neo-Nazis within Russia.
Yeah, I mean, that was an issue that we discussed 2 weeks ago. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, 2 weeks ago, and yeah, our opinions on that have already been established, and that shouldn't stop us from defending a country from imperialist forces.
Yeah. And so, overall, this entire thing is going to be an absolute shit show, in my opinion.
Oh, without it.
It's going to be a shit show with the Ukrainian people being the unfortunate victims of a majority, if not all of it. Their entire lives of millions of Ukraine citizens are about to get thoroughly uprooted and destroyed. We are facing what could potentially be the largest European refugee crisis since the Syrian refugee crisis, after we went and fucked over that country. Oh, we didn't just fuck it over. Assad and the Russians did a lot of fucking over too, but we weren't innocent in that either. But we're going to see it worse here, because this is going to be within the European continent. We're about to face a massive refugee crisis, because wars like these and how destabilizing they are make people want to leave their countries. They want to make them find somewhere more stable. They are going to leave Ukraine and try to find other places within Europe or here in the United States. And that causes a negative feedback loop with Ukraine proper. When you have millions of people fleeing, an enemy army on your doorstep, and you are fighting for your life to try and maintain some level of stability, everything is coming crashing down on top of you. And that pressure is going to absolutely destroy anybody unfortunate enough or stubborn enough to want to stay in Ukraine during this time. And I don't say stubborn as a bad thing. It's good to be stubborn in a situation like this. This is your home. You shouldn't be forced out of your home by a foreign army. That's fucking ridiculous. We live in the 21st century. That shit should have died in the 20th century. It should have died in the 19th century, to be perfectly honest with you. But it didn't. And it's completely fucked that these people are being forced out of their homes. But that is what will happen. And it's going to be terrible. Millions of lives are going to be lost. And let it be known that Slavic states are not treated well by Western Europeans at all. We all joke about how Europe is white. No, Europeans fucking hate each other. Why do you think the continent of Europe has erupted in war for literally every century since we ever knew what the fuck Europe was? Europe has constantly been fighting each other, and they fucking hate each other's guts. From the Anglos to the French, to the Germans, to the Italians, to the Slavs, all of them hate each other. And if you don't think the Slavic refugees that will come into Eastern Europe will not enter ethnic tensions and will be treated like dog shit, you have another thing coming. Which is another problem with this entire thing. The fact that this will only further cause more harm among what is basically the proletariat, which will be divided among ethnic lines. You will have Slavs be treated like second-class citizens to whatever citizenry they emigrate to, and we're going to just be stuck with poor people fighting poor people, just as the capitalist bourgeoisie class wants all along. Because at the end of the day, the rich people in power in all of these situations profit the most. The Russian oligarchs profit off of this. The NATO oligarchs profit off of this. And whoever in Ukraine is able to play both sides of this well enough will come out with fat stacks. But at what cost? The cost of millions dead, displaced, and ruined. That is the true evil of this entire invasion. That is the true evil of all imperialism. And that is why it is so goddamn frustrating to see what people have to say about this. But before we get into that part, Sovereign.
Okay. Honestly, I am very grateful that you know so much about foreign policy, because, like I said many months ago, when I hear foreign policy, my brain melts. But thankfully, I think I've had more of a grapple hold on this scenario as a whole, just because of how much attention there is to it. and how much history there is behind it. Like, especially with the 2014 invasion of Crimea. Like, to learn about that and to learn that this was an ongoing thing for almost a decade. I mean, that is almost unheard of. Because, I mean, to the layman, like you said, Crimea was nothing. He don't care about the invasion of Crimea. But now that they're invading eastern Ukraine, all of a sudden care. I mean, that's an opportunity to learn, sure, but it just demands so much attention.
Yeah.
But with this half of the segment wrapped up, I do want to take a small break because ultimately Shiny will be leading this segment because he will be discussing a topic while I have neglected to consider, and most of current left has neglected to consider. He does have strong opinions about it, but before we get into that, we want to thank chat.
Yes. Thank you all that have tuned into the stream so far. In my opinion, this is a very important episode just because while we are leftists, I feel like on this podcast we haven't truly talked about aspects of leftism that we believe in and are a part of. And one thing that we truly do believe in, both Sovereign and I think I can speak for both of us, is that we truly do care about the international proletariat. We care about workers across all of the world. We care about workers regardless of their borders, their race, their ethnicity, their creed, where they come from, their gender, their sexuality, all of it. We care about all of them because at the end of the day, there is more uniting us than there is more uniting us with our oppressors. Yeah. And so talking about this subject is very important, and that's why it's amazing that you guys are here.
Yeah, I mean, these past few months, honestly, ever since we've come back for our second season, chat has been relatively consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even without chat, we also just been getting more and more views on the live streams, and sorry I haven't been posting segments. I have a lot of medical issues. I'm a very sick person. I have been dealing with a lot of medical issues for the past year, and I'm a very sick person, and so editing has become incredibly difficult for me to do. I mean, I can't even enjoy things in my personal life. I mean, I just beat Pokemon Legends Arceus the other day because I just haven't had the strength to play video games I like.
Yeah, and I wish I could absorb the editing process as well, but unfortunately, I do work full-time, and I recently did get a promotion and a raise, so now I'm going to be even more involved with work, so it's less research time for me, unfortunately.
Yeah, and so maybe we'll add a third person that will help us with editing. Maybe they'll come on the show with us too. I think that'd be pretty cool.
That would. But at the end of the day, that's all dependent on us keeping up the quality, us continuing to grow. Because, I mean, even though we're still small, we're still seeing consistent growth in most of our metrics. Like, we have consistent sub growth, we have consistent chat response. Yeah. I think we're still on the right track.
Yeah, I think we're definitely on the right track. Yeah. And I just want to thank you guys. Thank you, Vinny, for commenting in chat. You're always our number one fan, have been with us since episode 1, so we greatly appreciate you. Always chatting, always viewing, always commenting, liking, and sharing. And to everyone else that's viewing that hasn't done anything, feel free to comment, or if you don't feel comfortable to, that's fine, but just thank you for being here. And if you like what you see, subscribe, like, comment, share, follow us on all social media, support us via Patreon or the Anchor support. We'll start recording Patreon exclusive segments soon, so please look forward to that. And yeah, I just really want to thank you guys.
Okay. So, beginning our second half of the segment, I want to start with a little bit of structure. So here's how we're going to do this. You are going to give a brief description. I'm going to give my perspective on this group that we're about to talk about. And then you have full reign to rant. Because, let's just face it here, you feel much more passionate about this than I do. Because again, like I said, this kind of problem has been kind of on the wayside, as I will soon describe. But go ahead and start us off here.
Okay, so this is very much tying into our previous segment about Russia and Ukraine, because when we gave you all that information and told you about all those different things and how pretty much there's no good guys here in this situation that really isn't just your average common person, that's a pretty unique take, all things considered, in terms of the discourse surrounding the Russian-Ukraine conflict. A lot of people take this as a means to be cheerleaders in their favorite team, like it's a fucking team sport, where one side is like, go NATO, go, or go America, or they're like, yeah, go Russia, go Putin, all that different shit. And they completely, like, get lost in the sauce about what's truly important. But I want to focus specifically on the people that are like, go Putin, yeah, go Russia, fuck Ukraine, they're a bunch of Nazis, etc. There's a very strong contingent of people, specifically on the online left, but I think there's more of them in person, in terms of in-person leftism, than I think we truly believe. There's a group known as Tankies. Tankies, historically, are in reference to a group of British leftists who were very pro-Soviet Union during the time when Hungary was in the 1950s, I believe specifically it was 1956?
1954, 1956.
1954 and 1956, there was a Hungarian uprising against the tyranny of the Soviet Union within their borders. They felt that they were not being treated fairly, they felt they were being completely stamped out, they felt that their freedoms and liberties were completely stolen from them. And they were very much being aggressive about it, to say the least. But the proportional response that the Soviet Union gave, and the picture that I have up on screen, is that they brought tanks. They brought tanks into Budapest, and they killed a lot of people.
And so that's where the origin of the phrase tanky comes from.
Tanky came from anti-communist people within the UK looking at these pro-Soviet people and being like, the fuck is wrong with you people?
Yeah.
And so that's where the term tankies come from. A lot of people in modern times will also conflate tankies because they also do support the People's Republic of China. They conflate it with the picture of Tiananmen Square. The infamous picture being the man that's standing in front of tanks that, while we never see the ending, we all know the man was brutally run over by Chinese tanks. That is another picture that people will tend to associate with tankies. So, for a layman, tankies is basically people that support authoritarian regimes that pretend to be left-wing. And the symbol of that is the use of tanks in the face of very much lesser opposition.
Yeah. Now, so my perspective is that tankies have never been politically relevant as far as modern politics are concerned. Because really, we only see them online. We never really interpret them as much of a threat. And so that is why, up until this moment, I have not considered them as far as like requiring my attention. Like, I've never cared about them. They are just people who are extremely loud on the internet. And ultimately, I've just let them go in one ear, out the other, and just not let them take up space. So that's pretty much how I've felt about them. Now, of course, as Shiny will go into recently, current response to them and from them and about them, the whole thing has changed.
Yeah. So, I want to preface this statement with this. Tankies, in terms of Western hegemony and Western political discourse, are very much a fringe minority.
Yeah, like I said, they are politically irrelevant because we don't have tankies in our government.
Yeah.
Like, at most, we have social democrats like the Squad.
See, no, I wouldn't even say social democrats are comparable to tankies.
No, they're as far left as we go.
Oh, yeah, as far left as we go, yeah.
Like, they're as far left in government as we go as far as the left holding power in government.
Yeah.
Sorry, I guess I didn't word that properly.
No, you're fine. So, yeah, tankies are very much a fringe minority group, which is why most people in America, whether you're politically in tune or not, probably have never heard of tankies at all.
Oh yeah, I only learned about tankies as far as when I first joined the left, and that being a year into my first being politically involved.
Yeah. So tankies are not necessarily like this big uber scary thing that you should be looking over your shoulder for, and that they're definitely going to take over the government. Fuck no. Tankies will never take over the United States government. They'll never take over any form of Western hegemony because, let's be honest here, there are far more evil people in the world that will sooner stamp out tankies or tankies will be absorbed into. Like, let's be honest here. In terms of American society, you face more threats from neocons and neolibs than you ever will a tanky.
Yeah.
So I want to preface all of this by saying that by making this, letting it known that when it comes to fighting for equality and fighting for just freedom in Western spaces, tankies are not a huge enemy. However, when it comes to discourse surrounding what is considered the global south or the global periphery, meaning the ones not in the imperial core, tankies are a different ballgame. Tankies, for lack of a better term, simp for authoritarians. They love authoritarians. They literally cheerlead for these people like Republicans cheerlead for their politicians. They love them. And it's honestly just as disgusting as when Republicans do it, but in some ways it's a little bit more insidious because Republicans don't pretend to be left-wing. Republicans make it very known they hate the left, they hate leftism, they do not like leftist values, they think all leftism is a fucking sham. They don't support leftism at all.
Yeah.
Tankies, on the other hand, ape the aesthetics of leftism while cheerleading for authoritarianism. And that's where things get to be very, very ugly.
Yeah, because if you'll see online, tankies, they'll still support BLM, they'll still support trans rights movements when it's convenient for them and not in context to the authoritarians and simp for.
Yeah.
But they are still active, like, visually. They still appear to be in support of leftist movements.
Exactly.
And that's where the sinister part comes in.
Yeah. So, for example, usually if you talk about tankies and there's a tanky that's an American and you talk to a tanky about domestic policy, 9 times out of 10, y'all are agreeing on the same things. Your opinions on domestic policy probably are the same thing. You may be disagreeing about where you see the future of America going in a left-wing perspective, but it's not anything that raises alarm bells. But once you start talking about what goes on in other countries, the true evil of them appear. And I say evil because I think it is a level of evil. The reason being is this. When you simp for authoritarians, and you cheerlead for them, and you run defense for them, you are downplaying their abuses. You are very much justifying and allowing for their abuses to be considered normal. You normalize it, or you very much try to obfuscate whether it's real or not. One of the prime examples of this is the current Uyghur Muslim genocide in the Xinjiang province of China.
Yeah, with that being said, like, because as most of us know, there is a cultural genocide going on with Uyghur Muslims, with them being acclimated by force into their society.
Yes. And this is part of the global war on terror, which, for one, it's part of the global war on terror, which, in my opinion, is less a war on terror and more a war on brown people and a war on the religion of Islam.
Yeah.
More than anything else. Because that's why the Uyghurs are even targeted. The Uyghurs are targeted because they're Muslim. That's why. According to the People's Republic of China, specifically the CCP, they believe that the Uyghurs' Muslim identity serves to potentially be as a stabilizing factor to Chinese society, and thus they need to become more acclimated, and I say so with quotation marks, to Chinese society, and thus they need to let go of said Muslim identity.
Oh yeah.
That is most assuredly a form of genocide. Getting rid of a specific group's culture by systematically forcing them into scenarios to erase it is genocide.
I mean,
It'd be one thing. Sorry.
They aren't allowed to fast. They aren't allowed to take on Muslim-sounding names. I mean, it is a cultural genocide.
Yeah, it's very much stripping them of their culture. And tankies, when pressed about this horrible, horrific thing happening within the Xinjiang province, will try and say, oh, that's U.S. State Department propaganda. That's CIA shit. That's not real. You're being misled. You need to do more research. You need to basically they try to do many things to obfuscate whether it's real or not.
Which that claim is non-falsifiable. There's no way you can disprove that, really.
Yeah, there's no way you can disprove it, but you also can't prove it to them. Because any source you bring up can easily be dismissed as having been connected to Western propaganda, specifically United States State Department propaganda and the CIA. Anything that is not, say, from the CCP could be easily argued not to be propaganda. Anything that's not from the CCP can be argued to be propaganda, and anything from the CCP can be argued to be fact by tankies. This makes it very difficult for you to actually have a discussion, much less condemn the CCP about the Uyghur Muslim genocide. But even if you somehow got past that layer, tankies will then start rolling out talking points that look very, very conservative, which would start to betray their leftist aesthetic. For example, they'll start to say, well, Islam is a very repressive and sexist religion. It doesn't promote equality. It very much causes harm to LGBT youth. It doesn't allow for women to have equality. Like, it's misogynistic. Like, Islam in itself is regressive and should be a relic of the past. Like, we shouldn't be defending that in the first place. Which is now a very different argument from when they initially said that it wasn't happening, or that the reason that it was happening was just because it was to better acclimate them to Chinese society. Now they've taken a very hard essentialist stance against Islam and against the people that practice it, and have now started to frame them as some type of evil, some type of bad that needs to be corrected. They have now shifted towards victim blaming. And in the context of victim blaming a group of people undergoing a genocide by an authoritarian regime, that's really fucking evil, you asshole. Like, it's very similar, because it's very much indistinguishable. It's very similar to how conservatives, for example, talked about in the past the Native Americans when we committed our genocide against them. That it was justified because we had a right to this land, and that their way of life was incompatible with our way of life, and so we had to push them further off because we had claim to this land, and that, their practices are just brutal and savage, and they just don't mix with our colonized, civilized view.
So, ultimately, they're providing justification for our colonization of the American land?
In a way, if you use their arguments, yes. The problem is that with tankies, they are very anti-West, specifically anti-US.
Oh, very much so.
So, if I said exactly what I said in the context of Native Americans, they would turn to me and rightfully call me a racist, because everything that I just said that was in defense of the colonization of Native Americans was really fucking racist. But then if you point out the same rhetoric that they use, which is similar to my rhetoric, when they talk about the Muslims within the Xinjiang province, they will then say they're not racist. They will say that you are actually a CIA puppet, shill, whatever, and that you are just trying to stop the global expansion of leftism.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. Because, first of all, I cannot stress this enough, defending genocide is fucking abhorrent, and if you do that, you're a monster. Don't fucking do it. These people defend genocides. They defend all sorts of actions in in much the similar way we shame conservatives for doing so. And they're willing to throw any and everyone under the bus to defend these actions. For example, these people, when talking about the CCP, they will talk about how, Xi Jinping?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Xi Jinping, he's the current president? Prime Minister?
No, he's not prime minister.
President.
I think he's president.
The current president of China.
The current leader.
Current leader of the People's Republic of China. They will say that he is trying to bring about socialism, and to do so he needs to fight all these color revolutionaries that are pushing us more to a capitalistic way, and that we'll never achieve leftism if we keep opposing him. But then Xi Jinping does things like outlaw gender nonconformity among masculine presenting people, or just outright being anti-LGBT, which, that's really fucking regressive and has nothing to do with socialism. Why is he doing that? Isn't that really fucked up? We should criticize him. They would then say, well, no, because being LGBT is actually a bourgeoisie invention and has nothing to do with actually helping the lower class, and that actually it's a good thing that they're repressing these gay people, because at the end of the day, we should be focusing on the workers. Which... No! No, and no. That's not how any of this shit works.
I'm having trouble understanding that process, that train of thought, because especially in the U.S. context, that's not how that works.
Because it doesn't make sense in any context, because, like I've said before, conservative ideology does not make sense. It is a bunch of cognitive dissonance on top of cognitive dissonance, and tankies are no different than conservatives. They do this shit everywhere. For example, we talked about Russia-Ukraine. These motherfuckers were absolutely 100% defending Putin's actions for what he did. Mind you, what Putin is doing is absolutely, undeniably, the exact same thing that Adolf Hitler did when he annexed the Sudetenland of Yugoslavia, and when he annexed Austria. Both of those were horrible imperialistic actions. Yet for some reason, Putin's is justified because of NATO expansion. You want to know though why the fuck Hitler did it? Because he believed that he was representing the fucking Aryan. He was representing Aryan Aryan not hegemony. Aryan.
Darn it, that was the word.
Aryan needs, or whatever. Like, basically ethnic Aryans, and that they need to be unified in their unified front against the Jewish hegemonic power. That's the same exact shit. But you point that out to a fucking tanky, and they will act like you spoke another fucking language. They will act like you said that you fucking slapped the shit out of their dog. Tankies are they are dishonorable, but they're dishonest, and they're slimy fucks. They do not care for the international proletariat that they say they do. All they are just a bunch of privileged, spoiled, mostly white children that live within the imperial core, that get to LARP about being a revolutionary while they give absolutely zero fucks about the real proletariat, and all they have to do to ignore all the criticism that they get is to go outside and live their life because they're a privileged fucking person that doesn't have to face the consequences for the political rhetoric they put out there. They don't have to deal with the consequences of damning people that are being genocided. They don't have to live with the consequences of queer people across the world getting repressed by authoritarian regimes. Because at the end of the day, they live in fucking America. And while being gay in these countries aren't, being gay in America isn't a fucking cakewalk, it's much easier than being actively repressed in some of these other countries. These people are privileged to the umpteenth degree. They are the definition of living in an ivory tower looking down upon you like you're a fucking peasant. That's what tankies are. Tankies literally simp for authoritarians because it's counterculture to them. Leftism is nothing but an aesthetic for them. They virtue signal about class consciousness. They virtue signal about the international proletariat. They virtue signal about bringing a revolution, when in the reality they would fold like a fucking omelet if you spoke at them with a high enough tone. They are absolutely not on our side. They are not leftist. They are not at all revolutionary. They are not socialist. They are not progressive. They are regressive, fascistic lunatics, and we should not in any way be enabling them within the leftist community. But for some reason, We do. The shit that they said during the lead up to the Russian invasion of Ukraine was absolutely disgusting. They damned the people of Ukraine, calling them, all of them, neo-Nazi fascists, as if calling for a group of 44 million people, a group of 44 million individuals, all neo-Nazi fascists, and that they deserve to have their country completely bowled over by a nuclear power that literally is threatening to nuke the entire world if they said no. That's fucking ridiculous. Why on earth are we allowing these people into our movement? And why are we playing defense for them? Why are we repeating their talking points? If you ever said that all of Ukraine is just a bunch of fascist neo-Nazis and it's a failed state that deserves to get fucking annexed by a global power, fuck you, and I hope you are forever haunted by the souls of dead Ukrainians that will come at the hands of the Russian army when they shell cave into a fucking smoldering husk. You are a sick piece of shit that has no empathy at all for the international proletariat. You don't care about poor people. All you care about is your LARPing and your virtue signaling about how you're holier than thou and how you're so pure and how you are just different and how you understand America's all fucked up and so you simp for other countries because America's bad. Fuck you, you dishonorable, immature fuck. Honestly, I honestly hope you kiss a fucking train. Honestly. Because you people are fucking sick. And anyone that played defense for them, fuck you too. I hope you are also haunted by these souls. I hope you are haunted to the point that you are brought to the brink of insanity and you have to prostrate yourself in front of their fucking graves and plead like your life depends on it to let the ghosts and the voices stop. Only for them to soundly reject you and for you to be haunted until your inevitable death where you are dragged down to the pits of hell. For eternity being haunted by the very people that you damned because you don't actually care about innocent people. Fuck you. Honestly, I'm sick and tired of the online left playing defense for these people. These people don't care about us. And when I mean us, I mean about the general person. Because if they actually cared about us, you would see these people actually doing direct action. You want to know what these people do? They sit around collecting Russian or Chinese money, or they're just fucking trolling. Half of the people are just fucking teenagers that are immature, but the other half are grown-ass adults that do this as a part of a legitimate propaganda wing. There are a bunch of tankies within Russian media. And I'll call them out. Caleb Maupin, Aaron Mate, fucking Haas from Infrared, fucking Jackson Hinkle. All those motherfuckers are on Russian payroll. And they will sooner see the innocent people across the world get trampled over if it meant to spite America. They are not true progressives. They do not want to see the death of the nation state, which is what we should be wanting. Because the death of the nation state is the death of the of the harmful hierarchies that have been a blight on our society since their very inception. They don't care about the death of the nation state. They care about their favorite nation state winning against the opponent nation state because politics is nothing but sports for them. This is nothing but a team sport and no different than supporting the Patriots over the fucking Rams. They do not care. They were willing to sell all of you out to the oligarchs because they get to profit off of it and they never have to reap any of the consequences for their actions. They are deplorable people. They absolutely do not have our best opinions in mind. And the fact that the online left galvanizes these people and treats them as if their opinions are valid and that we should see them as allies is absolutely shameful. Marx is rolling in his fucking grave at the fact that you people would ever side with yourself with authoritarians that don't even believe in communism for that matter. Why do you people simp for fucking Putin? He hates communism. He's made it very known that communism is not what he likes. He fucking despises it. He is a capitalist through and through. Yet you people will literally suck his dick like it's your mother's teeth. Fuck you, you absolute brain-dead sheep. Honestly, I just absolutely despise you people because you're just like people with white guilt. You don't actually care about the people you so-called advocate for. All you care about is making yourself feel better because you're depressed about living in a world that's fucked up and you have to make it about yourself. You have to make it so that you have to virtue signal and that your virtue signaling is somehow praxis and that you're actually doing some type of good when in reality, all you're doing is trying to stave off this self-flagellation and self-pity you feel for yourself because you realize the world is fucked up. You fucking pussy. fuck you. You are absolutely not helping. You are the enemy to us. You are the enemy to the proletariat. You are the enemy to the common person. All you are is just another aspect of imperial hegemony being blasted out into the void as you talk over real people that need help. The amount of you people that disregarded the real cries of help from the Ukrainian leftists that needed our help when they were constantly saying, please believe us, Russia's going to invade us, we need support, please don't take Russia's side on this, and that you and then you just completely trounced over them, you are absolutely despicable, because this is even the first time you people pulled this shit. Back during the Hong Kong protests, you called the Hong Kong protests fucking color revolution, and you supported and stand the CCP as their brutal authoritarian police force came in and stamped the life out of people. Absolutely fucking despicable. You people do the same shit in fucking Thailand. You do the same shit in fucking Russia against other Russian leftists. You did this in fucking Syria, of all places, when Assad gassed his own citizens, which is a fucking war crime. You people don't care about anyone but yourselves. All you care about is making yourself feel good because you like to be counterculture. Well, newsflash, politics isn't a fucking aesthetic. Politics determine the life of people. There are millions of people whose lives are dependent on the rhetoric that gets put out in the imperial core. And you contributing to false narratives leads to their deaths. You have their blood on their hands if you repeat this propaganda. And it is propaganda. And you act like you're holier than thou, like you're somehow above U.S. State Department propaganda when you fall face first into the other country's propaganda. You aren't immune. I'm not immune. None of us are immune to propaganda. But we shouldn't act like we are. Because acting like we are breeds ignorance. And that ignorance allows for more people to stay ignorant. There have been so many people that said so much ignorant shit about the fucking situation in Ukraine and about other situations in the past, such as the fucking Holodomor, which was, by the way, a fucking genocide in Ukraine done by Stalin. Another person they sent for, who is nothing but an autocratic dictator, who is a fucking monster, who, if he had his way, would have buddied up with the fucking Nazis and would have taken over all of Europe, because he's a fucking monster. And any of people that try to say he was an ally to us is an enemy to me, and he should be an enemy to you, because they are wrong. I am absolutely sick and tired of entertaining tankies. I'm sick and tired of allowing them to be wrong in our spaces. I'm sick and tired of allowing this rhetoric to spread, because we see this rhetoric now get parroted by people in far higher places than these randos. Fucking Noam Chomsky was parroting tanky talking points that came directly from the mount of fucking Russian propaganda. Fucking Jeremy Corbyn, the man that could have been the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, was parroting fucking appeasement shit. Shit that you will see directly come from the mouth of Russian oligarchs, parroted through Russian Today and the Gray Zone, parroted then through quote-unquote leftists into their spaces, and now they think they are the right ones. No, you are not. You are fucking wrong. The world is not so fucking simple for you to think just because America supports something is fucking bad. You are just absolutely infuriating to deal with, because you absolutely distill any discourse, any nuance, any actual discussion about how we can make this world better, because you want to play team sports. Fuck you. Honestly, I hope you all burn. I hope forever. If there is a hell, I personally want to see every last one of you. I hope you all burn.
Let's take a moment. Now, everything you said was correct. And I 100% agree with you. But let's take a second.
For me, I'm a black man in America, so I'm used to being pandered to by white people. I'm used to seeing the white hegemonic power structures bring down me and people like me. So when I see people that claim to be on my side run around and ignore our voices and run around and claim that they know best and then shout down the people that try to correct them, I see red. I am disgusted. Tankies are no different than the people with white guilt that act like them apologizing for slavery is supposed to make me feel better. You are no different. You are just fucking terrible. Like, why on earth do you do what you do, honestly? Like, why would you, as someone Like, you're just a random person in America. What gives you the right to talk over the lives of actual Ukrainians when they say they're in trouble? What gives you the right to dismiss the innocent people in the Xinjiang province, to dismiss their genocide?
And it's like what you said. It's their consequences, or their rhetoric has no consequences whatsoever.
Yeah. What gives you the right? Actually, I was incorrect a little bit when I said their rhetoric has no consequences. There were consequences for some tanky action. When the Hong Kong protest happened, and when Western tankies labeled them as fucking color revolutionaries, and the rest of the online left sat back and did nothing and let the tankies take the foreground, the Hong Kong revolutionaries turned to the American right wing for support. Because the American right wing supported them, not because they believed in any of the values they supported, but because they saw it as a political angle for them to one-up China.
They're not consequences in general. I mean consequences to them.
Yeah.
That's what you meant.
Yeah, no, there's no consequences to any of these motherfuckers that say any of this shit. They say this shit every day. They go around and scream that people are CIA propagandists. Oh, and actually they do much more than that. They dox people. They harass people. They send people death threats. They astroturf entire communities. They shout down discourse. They are absolutely evil people. And in my opinion, they are no different than the conservative fascists that we deal with in the imperial core here.
Yeah, I think so. That's why I wanted to correct you, because you were definitely in the heat of the moment for sure, and everything you said was correct. Whew.
I can't stand it. Seeing the Russia-Ukraine situation unfold, and seeing how callous people were, and completely ignoring the wants and whims of the Ukrainian people, was absolutely devastating. But what was more devastating was seeing high-profile people in leftist communities, and I'll fucking say their names, like Hassan Piker, like Kyle Kulinski, like Cenk Uygur and the Young Turks, how they fucking ignored the claims of the Ukrainian people because they wanted to fucking push the idea that America was saber-rattling. Because all they can think of from their position from their position of privilege within the imperial core here is from America's perspective. That's all these people see it from. They don't see the world in the multitude of perspectives that leftism tries to encourage people to do. They don't see intersectionality like we're supposed to. They see things through one way or another. They see it through either a winner and a loser. They don't see it in the multitudes of shades of gray that this world has been defined by. And I think that's absolutely just terrible. And these people that were doing that, they are normally good. They advocate for great domestic policies. They advocate for Medicare for all. They advocate for racial equality. They advocate for sexual liberation. They advocate for so many different great causes. But when it comes to the actual international proletariat, who are supposed to be the backbone of the inevitable revolution that we all are trying to bring about, that will inevitably bring equality and freedom for all, they backslide so fucking far. They absolutely abandon the people that they claim to want to save. And for what? So they can look good? So they can prove that they're the most purest leftist out there? It's absolutely disgusting.
And it's also bad because all of a sudden tankies have an issue that are relevant to them. And they see it as their opportunity to get their foothold of leftist spheres. And we just see people clapping like
seals.
I was about to say spiels. I was legit about to say spiels.
But
even though we had no Pokemon segments today.
Yeah. No, they're clapping like seals, and it's fucking disgusting. We do this, but specifically me, for why I do this. I have been politically minded since before I was at the age of 10, and I've said this before. So, growing up, I saw the rise of a man named Steve Bannon, a man who was a fringe Nazi owner of Stormfront, who galvanized entire groups of insecure white men in gaming spheres, and used that influence to catapult himself into a place of political power, where now he's currently in jail because of his position in orchestrating a fucking insurrection in America. I saw that. I saw all of that. And I realized that we could do something but better. We could do what he did, but as a force for good. We can put our opinions out there and galvanize people so we can fight for freedom, real equality, real justice. But I also see the people that claim to be on our side that oppose us while saying they're on our side. If you actually want freedom, you need to oppose the nation state as a whole. The nation state is a repressive apparatus that seeks to divide us. Nation states breed what will inevitably become ethno-nationalism because of the idea of identifying yourself with the state you are from. A state that you are from, which is completely arbitrary at that, mind you. Nation states aren't real. They're as real as we make them. There is actual no difference between the United States and Canada if you walked between the border between the two of them. It's not like it's a fucking different gravity. It's not like the sky turned fucking yellow. It's the same fucking place. Same thing if you walked from the US to Mexico, or if you walked from Chile to Argentina, if you walked from fucking Russia to Ukraine, if you walked from China to Korea.
Yeah, don't let movies sepia filter mislead you about Mexico, please, for the love of God.
There is no different. The idea of a nation state is an inherently regressive, an inherently hierarchical, and an inherently repressive system. It seeks to divide us. It seeks to cause problems for the ones that are at the bottom. The people who profit from the proliferation of the nation state are the richest among us. They get to profit off of it wholesale because they, whenever they need to just drum up more support for themselves, all they got to do is just drum up some tension against another nation state, and look at that number climb, baby. Look at what fucking Bush did with 9/11. Because let's be honest here, we were on a crash course with a fucking repression with George Bush. But you know what this motherfucker did? He got us head first into a 20-year-long slog within the Middle East that we're still a part of, with millions dead and displaced across the planet. Why? Because of the nation state. The concept of a nation state. The concept of the United States, of Canada, of Russia, of Afghanistan, of China, of all of those things. The invention of these states allow for such horrible things to be done. And tankies support nation states through and through. You don't hear tankies calling for the inevitable destruction of the People's Republic of China when socialism is achieved, because that's actually not what they want. Because they know that's never going to happen. They just support China under the guise of socialism because it's counterculture for them to do it. Because they grew up in a world where American exceptionalism was at an all-time high and then came crashing to the fucking floor. And so, all of you, for those of you that are still listening, I want to just tell you that leftism is a political movement and a political idea.
It is not aesthetics.
It's not aesthetics. This is not an aesthetic for me or Sovereign. If you knew us in our day-to-day lives,
we talk about politics almost every day. We care about this stuff because it matters.
Yeah.
We talk about its implications in day-to-day life. We talk about the potential for future progress or future conflict. This stuff matters, and we care much more than just pure aesthetics.
And when we talk to other people, we don't just give them some type of just platitude about what we believe in and then just walk away.
Yeah, we don't give each other leftist handshakes like, oh, you're a leftist, hello. No, we talk about the issues, we talk about the implications, we talk about everything.
We share our ideas with people because we legitimately believe in them. We believe in the political ideologies that we have subscribed to, and we want to share them with people so they could potentially agree with us, and we could potentially start to see a movement that will push us further into that direction. This is not aesthetics for us. This is our lives. I'm a black man in America. I know the destructive capabilities of letting certain political ideas run around unopposed. They lead to the things that led my ancestors to be in chains back in Guyana. It will be the same thing that led to numerous people being led in chains in the future. And I, for one, don't want that to happen. I decided to make this podcast with Sovereign because I believe that our ability to convey our ideas could be done on a massive scale that would allow people to see the world like how we see it and to galvanize them to try and make their political ideologies known and try to get them to be more active in politics. This is not aesthetics, but for tankies it is. It's either aesthetics or it's a paycheck. We don't get paid for this. We hope that this could become a career for us, but we don't get paid for this. But we still come back week after week, barring health issues, because we legitimately enjoy what we do and we legitimately believe in what we do.
Ultimately, our end game is spreading the message as individuals. As a movement, of course, achieving social change should be our end game. But as individuals, as leftists without power, our end game should be spreading our message until we can create a movement that is representative of all the changes we make to society.
Absolutely. And so, in what will be our longest episode, I do want to just thank...
No way.
Yeah, it's nearly 3 hours.
Oh my god.
I just do want to thank all of you who have stayed and listened and watched and have supported us from the very beginning up till now. I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I just really hope that anything that we have said in the, 20 plus episodes of this podcast.
Yeah.
That we may have done something to change your view on something. It doesn't have to be big. It could be small. But if we have just changed your opinion on something slightly to be more in line with something progressive, I would love that. It would be something great. And we fully intend to do this for as long as we can.
Yeah. And even barring politics, if you're enjoying our media segments, we love talking about those too. We feel that the combination of our media and politics segments give room for people to congregate over things that they like to talk about.
Yeah.
And these are things that we enjoy talking about. Because ultimately, we care about politics a lot more, but having the area to wind down, look forward to the media that we consume every week is ultimately important as well. Because we enjoy politics, or talking about politics, the good and the bad. We like to dissect them and consider its implications on society as a whole. But we also just like bringing the news to people in general.
Yeah. Another thing about why we love our media segments is that sometimes the media segments allow us to talk about our politics in a unique way.
Yeah, we still talk about politics in our media segments.
Because in our personal opinion, and in the opinion of a lot of scientists, art and politics are one and the same. One cannot be independent of the other. They directly influence each other.
In my opinion, politics isn't everything.
It is. Politics permeates every aspect of our lives. Whether you think of it or not, it does. And so we talk about media as much as politics because talking about media in the way that we do can also allow for the way of our thinking to be presented to you guys and allow you to potentially think like how we think in terms of viewing things. And that's not to say that you should always think like we think. You should absolutely have your own individual perspective and opinions on things. But that's why we do what we do.
I'll give you two examples. Why do you think so many villains back in the day were effeminate? Or why do you think so many villains nowadays are corporate leaders? It's all because of politics.
Exactly. I mean,
because back in the day, people or writers in media were told to make their villains deviant from the norm, so they made them more effeminate. Now there's more of a counterculture against corporations.
Yeah.
So now our villains are in corporate power.
Yeah, in fiction. And there's a whole host of other things, such as the romance between races as described in movies, the allegories for gender, the various different representations of just atrocities throughout media that can all be derived. Even in something as simplistic as Dragon Ball, you can derive aspects of politics within it.
Yeah.
And even Pokemon is a great example with Legends Arceus, which is literally about
it's about
it's about colonization as well as the clashes between differing ideologies.
Yeah.
Like, Hisui, the region, was colonized. The Hisui region was home to the Celestica people, who were then colonized by what would then become the Diamond Clan and the Pearl Clan. And then the land was further colonized and then merged with the immigrants of the Galaxy Expedition Force to now create the region of Sinnoh. That's political.
Yeah.
In fact, the fact that the clans nearly have a fucking holy war is political. And it's reflected in the Pokemon games, is the Sinnoh games are the only ones that have overt references to religion, as the region of Hisui and Sinnoh was founded on a belief of religion. That's inherently political.
Oh yeah, the fact that the origins of Hisui are theocracies.
Yeah.
It's explicitly political.
Yeah, politics is everywhere, and we like to discuss media because it's also another way of us talking about the way we view things. And that's obviously also going to be a way of how we reflect our politics.
Yeah. So I feel like this, I hate, it doesn't apply here, but I want to use it in like the intersectionality of media and politics is just too big to ignore.
Oh, it absolutely
It's probably not the right use of the word, but I'm going to use it anyway.
I would just say the intersection.
Intersection, yeah, there we go. I know, like, intersectionality is a big term, and I'm not using it properly, but I'm going to...
Yeah, the intersection of politics and media.
There we go. That's a better way of phrasing it.
Yeah. But,
I mean, grammatically I'm using it right. I'm just using a big buzzword in the wrong way.
Yeah, but it's fine. I just want to thank you all for tuning in.
Yeah,
This was I would say, a pretty important milestone for us in talking very much firmly about history and how that history influences us today and how the world is just not simple.
Yeah.
There are a multitude of factors that led to the current conflict in Ukraine, as you guys clearly heard from when I described the lead up to this entire thing. So,
yeah. I'm actually happy that I actually had a little bit more influence on our last segment than I thought I would.
Yeah.
Because I thought it would just, you give description, I give context, you rant, we're done. I actually had a little more room for the rant to jump in and give a little more of my perspective.
Yeah.
Which I'm a little happy about, because I knew you were going to go on the rant. We had prepared for this.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, Sovereign has known for weeks now how I've been getting thoroughly upset at the discourse surrounding Ukraine and how it was just completely removing the agency of the actual people living. Yeah. Anyways, that'll be all from us.
Yep.
So thank you all for tuning in. If you like what you see, please subscribe to YouTube. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all the different places. Sub to the Patreon, support us on Anchor, listen on Spotify, share this with your family, your friends, your dog, whatever. But, I'll be your host, Shiny. You'll catch us every week at 4 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific every Wednesday.
And you stole my line. That was my line, and we're signing off. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.